Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story, True Terror in the World of Heroism Part 10 by HYPN0S. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. You and your families. Chapter summary: greener pastures, and so it begins a new life for the teens. Their dreams are within grasp. All they have to do is to reach it if they dare. They know the world is moving, and no one knows if they are ready. Chapter notes: hello all, HYPN0S here. I am alive, surprisingly. A quick update on my health. Weird. Apparently, I got a bug that may have inflated my gallbladder and my liver during December, hence the pain, thankfully nothing serious. Then I think I might have gotten COVID. As in, I have no idea. Fucking Omicron has the same symptoms as the common cold, and the day I went to the doctor she pretty much told me quarantine, as every symptom associated with the common cold is being treated as COVID Omicron, hence the quarantine, no joke. Then during the week, I might have gotten a bug or something on my stomach and spent a portion of my day in the bathroom. So yeah, I think Mother Arath is trying to kill me, but joke's on her, I am still here, cranky as hell. I get sick and I pretty much become the Grinch with a knife. Now what matters? This chapter, building more the world and the relation between the teens. Now things get spicy. I can see now why some writers focus on specific characters instead of the full cast. But I managed to nail it. Let's face it, at this point no one is the same after the bullshit I made them go through in Hack 1. Also, I am in the middle of a conundrum. Should I pre-order Tiny Tina's Wonderland or wait when Guardians of the Galaxy is on sale and buy it because I am hearing only good things of it? I live under a rock with the internet. But this is Tiny Tina. Assault on Dragon's Keep was so freaking funny, and I'm sure this will be too, so I am torn. Can only get one. Beyond that, here's the chapter. Enjoy. I would apologize for my apparent apathy, but right now seating hurts. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter 3, Greener Pastures, January 13. Izuku kept playing the recording back and forth, looking at the holographic display with a critical eye. He had passed. In fact, everyone in the group had passed. They were in the hero course, having even broken the record on points by a wide margin, this being due to the amount of mechs that had been unleashed on them. No, what had him looking at was at his fight with Fulgor, how he failed to mount an effective offensive until Okako intervened. It irked him now because now he could see that Fulgor had been programmed with him in mind to fight him with the available information of what he could do and surely other data, mostly of other heroes, so it could fight more effectively. This made Fulgor effectively one of the few things that could fight him and a T-doll or a bow without issues. The fact that the recording included Principal Nedzu telling that both Fulgor and the cyber ninjas were set on easy did not help in his mood. He was utterly played. He had been predictable and he had lost because of it. Then what I have been doing every time I fought a T-doll or a BOW? He asked himself as he rewinds the recording and watched it again. Again, he heard his mother say from the edge of the room, "I swear you're worse than me when I was your age," she said as she reached for the holographic projector and turned it off. "Mum," Izuku began. "We both know you weren't close to the mess I am now," he replied with a small smile. "Besides, I can hardly see you mope over a mistake," he added. Wrong, Inko reminded as she sat on his bed. "Your grandparents, my parents, weren't kind to me," she said. "Ask Mitsuki-chan any day how I was back when I was your age and her answer will be this. A morose, edgy teenager without feelings and no actual future prospect aside from being a trophy wife and zero tolerance for failure and no understanding on how to manage failure," Inko replied. "I don't believe you," Izuku said. "That's just auntie being auntie, maybe, but she has known me the longest. We met when we were 13. I was cold. Failure wasn't an option. So when it happened I just moped," Inko replied. "Not my proudest moment when I failed an exam and I obsessed over it, like maniac obsession." "I am not obsessing," Izuku said with a pout. "I do not obsess." Hero Journal for the Future Volume 1 to 13, Inko reminded with a smile, making Izuku pout and turn away. With a sigh, Inko stood from the bed, walked to the desk her son was, and reached for a piece of paper in it. She stared at the image in it for a long time. "I know what is to be stuck in failure, son," she began. "It is a toxic thing, eating you away, with an apparent no way to fight back. No end in sight," she reminded as she placed the paper down and picked a pencil nearby. "But that only happens if you're alone," Inko replied as she worked on something on the paper and then handed it to Izuku, placing a kiss on his forehead as she did so. "It took me a while to ask for Mitsuki-chan for help when I realized of this. Don't be like me in that regard," she said as she walked back into the living room. It was a lazy day and Hisoshi was in the house as well. Izuku just watched his mom go, then turned and picked the paper when he had drawn his future hero costume, and slightly smiled. He had been having problems with it due to how much was too much and how less was too less. While he had settled with the jumpsuit aesthetic and color, he had been working his head against what to add and what not to add, what works and what won't work. The sheet had also things that he wanted to add but wouldn't fit thematically, like how All Might's hero costume wouldn't have a mask on because you wouldn't be able to see All Might's smile, or how Mako's own costume didn't have a skirt or a miniskirt a la Sailor Moon. That was just asking for problems and perverts. Izuku wanted to show how his suit reflected what he was as a person, and one of the original sketches was akin to Astoria but in green and horns. It looked cool, but it wasn't him. The jumpsuit had been the first thing that had felt his. Now his mom had added something else, alongside what he had wanted to add as well but no way how to. The mask of Corvo Atano, the mask of death, something akin to a skull, as if death itself was staring back at you. It also had telescopic functions. His mom had drawn something over it, and erased parts of it, mostly the parts that covered the mouth, and put something else, and then what she put over the top of the mask. Bunny ears, although they looked more like All Might's hair antennae than rabbit ears. It gave Izuku an idea. It took him 10 minutes, between corrections and drawing with better detail, but when he was done, he actually smiled. This looked like him. Looking at the sketch, that included his weapons, his very limited weapons, Izuku's brain began to run with ideas. Out of a whim he looked at the remaining bracelet that he had, the one that had survived Hashima Island, and an idea struck him. January 15. It was an atypical day, so much so that the media wasn't even aware that UA was going to start classes that very same day. Well, technically, it was going to be more of an assessment and an orientation, which irked Aizawa like nothing else in the world, but he had no voice or vote in the matter. It had to happen. On a logical level, Nedzu was right. They could not afford more of his logical ruses on the first day. They were strapped on hero hopefuls, and the last thing they needed was another kid with a grudge running on the streets tearing them apart. Especially if that one was empowered by the gas. Of course, he still was going to test the kids, especially his kids, considering he was saddled with the Hashima 20 and MIC had decided to call them. Well, the Hashima 20 plus one, Aizawa thought with a mental grin. The fact that now the courses had one extra student didn't help much alleviate the stress he was feeling. The fact that student 21 of 1A was one Melissa Shield, a girl who had lived in the most logical place ever, Island, an island of progress and above all else intelligence. Not a place that resembled a Jackass movie. Meanwhile in Island. Okay Jack, whenever you're ready. I am ready. I can't believe we strapped rockets into a chair, gonna ride it without any safeties and called it a day, back into UA. Aizawa stared as more kids began to make their way into the premises of the academy, bags in hands, boxes, carrying their belongings, while their parents looked at the entrance of UA with some teary looks. The majority, however, were happy that their kids would be in a safe place despite the fact UA had been attacked by the troop during the gas attacks, as a distraction, but still. Even more, Nedzu somehow got away with smuggling the troop base and adding it as some sort of underground training ground without no one noticing until he told everyone, because he is Nedzu and he does this kind of shit. His was not thrilled with this, especially since Nedzu pretty much strong-armed him to stop him from using his test to weed the kids from the real hero hopefuls and prevent someone from getting killed. Little could be done, however. They had by far the lowest number of hero hopefuls ever since the founding of UA. Other academies, upon seeing what UA had done, had followed suit and bent the rules for their favors, only that they expanded their hero courses. 10 more in their original courses plus one more course in the Department of Heroics, 90 students in total. UA stuck with their 42 model, opting for quality over quantity. Also, they had a secret base buried underneath the school premises. Take that, Shiketsu High School. With a sigh, he felt someone walking behind him. Years of heroing allowed him to realize that it was not a hostile or a new student. This is depressing, 13 muttered at his side. He found himself nodding at her assessment. It was indeed depressing. There were more people in the general course this year than in any other year because they opted to be there, unlike in other years because they simply weren't cut up to the hero course. Hell, the Department of Management had more students this year than ever. It is, Aizawa agreed. But there is little we can do about it. We can work with this, make sure that this generation is ready. You're going to work them hard. I am going to roar them, Aizawa admitted to 13. I won't coddle them, I can't coddle them. We have never coddled a class. We ask the best. They are the best, so we give them our best so they can be even better than the best, 13 said as she removed her helmet. exposing a face that most reporters would have killed to take a picture of. This year won't be different, only the circumstances, she admitted with a frown. 20 students know what is to fight for their lives. I was assigned to train one of them because he attracted attacks on himself like black holes attract everything to them. 13. Actually gave Izawa a look after that quip. Did you just take a jab at my quirk? Am I wrong? No. 13 shook her head at that. Anyway, Hound Dog is preparing himself for the veritable tide of issues these kids will have, all of them, not even the kids that survived Hashima. I read the field of shield. San 13 said. Yes, survived an explosion that nearly killed her and used experimental nanits to survive. The nanits enhanced her body to the point that her quirk, Energy Hoarder, finally activated after 11 years. Izawa narrowed his eyes at 13's explanation. Her quirk's gonna be an issue. There is little information about stockpile quirks. My only experience is with Midoriya's own, but he stockpile power-ups, not energy, he admitted. She admitted that the energy accumulated is thermal, electrical, and chemical. Her quirk allowed her to store all that energy her body generated throughout 11 years, but since her body wasn't even near able to handle so much energy, it simply didn't manifest it up until the nanits exposure. 13 admitted. Heck, there is a theory that her quirk might have been the reason she was able to get the nanits in her in the first place, as her heart was split in two, the rescue hero stated. Izawa just groaned, but it wasn't as long-suffering as she expected. She's nearly dying, and the first thing she does is use experimental nanits to save her life. If you're going to bitch about not being logical, don't. It wasn't just logical, it was the only thing she could do. 13 said as she backhanded Izawa's chest in a playful manner. Besides, it's not like she went about and tried to use a self-destructive quirk on the get-go. Her file states that she uses the nanits in her and a watch to control the flow of energy and cap it at a certain percentage until she can do it as a second nature. It's a crutch, Izawa reminded. It's called being resourceful. She and Midoriya-san lived quirkless for 10 years, then boom, quirk with all the problems that they bring. Her approach was more practical. Not everyone can just flex their eyes and control their quirks, she teased with a smirk. Now who's making a jab at whose quirk? You had it coming. Everyone in staff had it with your logical bullshit, and Nedzu putting you in suspension gave us time to finally realize that for all your logical talk, you tended to be kind of a hypocrite and a dick, she added, making Izawa look at her with an annoyed look. Hypocrite. Your assessment on the first day of classes pretty much was that you expelled those who couldn't use their quirks in tests in which such quirks weren't made to be used. It's called being creative, Izawa defended himself. It's called being a dick, shouter. 13 reminded, eyes suddenly steely and fixated on his. I know you underground heroes are all hard ices because you handle the underside of society, but this is a school first and one of the best, she added as she put her helmet back on. This is no place for dicks and hypocrisy, and with that she walked away, making Izawa growl under his breath and shake his head. The worst part. She was right. Izuku grinned like a lunatic. He was here. He was finally here. His dream. He was here. UA Baby. The best academy in Japan, where the best heroes are trained to become even better than the average hero. Staring at the H-shaped building in all its glory, Izuku could not help the grin in his face become wider. After all the mess that was the past year and all that, he had honestly thought he might not make it. But here he was, after an exam that hurt more than the fight at Hashima and the damned Colosseum, broken leg and mind raped by his ex-principal and high on a lot of chemicals. Somehow, getting used as a pinball by Mirio after he had gut-punched Uraraka so hard she could not fight anymore was far worse than all the physical pain he had endured in his fights. It also highlighted the level gap between him and others, or better said how much the troops sucked and how much they depended on numbers, and he depended on overwhelming attacks that borderline on obscenely deadly to render atoms apart and therefore hurt for a second before you vaporize. As a hero, he's expected to be more tactical on how to engage hostiles and bring them alive, not as unrecognizable piles of ash or say that they died so hard they got vaporized. This actually brought up the realization that he was too stiff. He wasn't trying to mimic All Might combat techniques per se, but rather all the characters' fighting styles he had gained their powers from. Although there was not much to copy from Aya Breyer aside from how to use a gun and how to mope because she's unique. Had he gained her powers, he would have been on the top of the world, not moping on the fact her powers had distanced her from other humans. As a result, when he fought a human, trained one at that, he lost, badly. All because he was caught in the what if I fight like this or what would this character would do scenario. That was why he lost to Fulgore, that in fear, he still can't get over the many beatings he got in that game against that one character. He could beat everything but Fulgore, and that had got into him, believing since he couldn't Fulgor in a video game he couldn't beat it in real life. This realization came after he modified his hero costume sketch and an hour of arc meditation and a talk with Kachin of all things. Kachin had pointed that other things Izuku had killed in video games and he could beat and instinctively fought them with the same vigor and clinical brutality he engaged them. Nemesis appearing and he had nothing but a pistol? No problem. A Marlborough suddenly spanning against his underdeveloped party? Been there, done that. A Deathclaw suddenly rushing him? Nothing several bullets to the legs won't fix. But Fulgor. Try as he might, he was never able to defeat Fulgor. In player versus computer fights, yes he could, but in PvP fights, forget it. Honestly, he still can't believe he could pull that off in Mortal Kombat. Maybe because there weren't many tryhards in 11 Malawian Quachas, but in Killer Instinct God have mercy that place is Dark Souls level of tryhards and GIT good messages because the Killer Instinct tournaments were notorious for being the messiest of them all. Some of the best players were there, and most of them picked Fulgor because fuck you that's why. That had subconsciously stunned him, Kachin said, and his loss was part of that. He needed to get rid of the fear that Fulgor brought to him, otherwise, he might choke up on other things, and if he can't get over that he was sure as hell can't get over other serious issues. As for his fighting issues, well, Orderly obviously wouldn't do it anymore. He didn't realize it before because of his steady power gains, but he had become predictable. He had so much that he had become predictable in how to use it. There was a pattern. Hopefully with what I did last night that changed, Izuku thought with a small grimace. Melissa would kill him if she learns what he did to the Master Sword. The thing was forged in Island, and surviving a solar-powered United States of Smash without a scratch should be a testament of the craftsmanship. Nevertheless, here he was, standing at the entrance of UA after his parents left with the girls, 2 bags full of clothes and 3 boxes held by his siren arms, one with his console and his computer, the other 2 with his books and hero merch newly acquired after Overhaul destroyed their apartment a year ago. Prick. Shaking his head, Izuku resolved himself to forget about the asshole. He was in jail and would never bother anyone else. And he was here, at UA, ready to train and become a hero and put pricks like Overhaul behind bars. It was time to take his first step. However, old habits die hard, and his shoes are kinda big. Therefore, he tripped. Why are we still here? Just to suffer. He could hear sins of the father intensify as the floor got closer. Then the floor stopped getting closer. Honestly, Midoriya-kun, he heard a familiar voice behind him, and he somehow felt a pull of something as the floor began to grow away from his face. You tripped. Looking back, he saw Okako, eyes black as she exerted her gravity pull over him and put him back in place. You need to get smaller shoes, she declared with a small smile as her gravity deactivated and her eyes returned to her usual brown shade. I can't. I still have the extra toe joint. All the other shoes chafe and hurt. These are the only brand that don't, Izuku declared with a pout as he saw Okako's stuff, which was just 2 bags that were laying on the ground, surely her clothes and the laptop Momo gave her. You have the extra toe joint. Well, that's just bad luck, Okako said as she shifted on her feet, kinda showing her own shoes. Too bad you can't get comfortable, form-fitting shoes as I can. You're 3 seconds from a singularity, Izuku pouted as he directed his siren arms to grab her bags and began to move away, making her cry in shock. Hey, wait a minute, I can carry them. I got extra arms, I am a gentleman, deal with it. I swear the first moment we are allowed to go outside, me and the girls are going to use you as a pack mule, as is fated to all males. Guardians make their own fate. Your fate is to be my pack mule, she groused as she clapped her hands with a smile. Now chop chop, the dormitories await. Wait, what was the last part? Izuku asked with some kind of blush. Move, Okako answered with a blush of her own, quickening her step. Wait up, Izuku whispered or yelled. If I fall for catching up to you, it's your fault. If you fall with my stuff, I'll levitate you to Pluto. You know no one cares about Pluto, right? You heretic. And a friendship was born. Aizawa waited patiently at the entrance of the 1A dorms, not inside his sleeping bag like he wished and wanted. Another lesson he wanted to teach the kids: expect the unexpected and stop wasting time. One he would have to teach in class, not today because today was orientation, which was just showing them the dorms, their positions in them, and that was it, letting them settle in for nearly 3 days because the majority wasn't used to living alone and it would take to getting used to living with strangers and setting up a schedule for the chores. As more kids began to move around the entrance, seeing him waiting at the door, he began to mentally count them and how they carried themselves. He frowned, not because they were lax at all, but because they weren't. Each one of them was looking around in an alert fashion. Each one of them was slightly tense. Their belongings were set aside as barriers in case something attacked them. He was missing 2 people, for heaven's sake. The shield girl made it first because as far as he could see, she was about to vibrate a hole to the ground, but she was also alert. Then he noted who was missing, Midoriya and Uraraka, and there they come. Look, Pluto will never be a planet. It will. It will reclaim its rightful place. Uraraka-san, Pluto's moon is bigger than Pluto itself. It is just a sign of its greatness. Not 5 minutes in and already in a lover's spat. You work fast, Izuku, Melissa said with a grin. Also, you're late. Look, I had to check if Era-chan didn't decide to stow away into my luggage, okay? You too? Kiro Aizawa was feeling the headache forming. The tension the kids had lessened, but they were still too tense for his taste. All right, you gremlins, listen up, Aizawa began, loudly, catching their attention. I am your homeroom teacher, Aizawa shouter. Welcome to UA. In here you will learn to be heroes, yada yada yada, he stated, bored, making the group blink. Not Izuku. He just shook his head with a small smile. Honestly, I would rather be seeing how you all handle your quirks and reminding you the world is an unfair place. But we all know that was already hammered to every single one of us, he reminded, making the teens frown at him. Because of the attacks and some idiot doing something illogical, we decided to turn UA into a boarding school, Aizawa continued. If it was for me, you all would be showing me why you deserve to be here, now, he replied. We don't need to show you why we belong here. Izuku had to actually bite the curse that came out of his mouth when Kachin spoke because it felt like a Kachin thing he would do. We are here. You take us out. You go out with us, Kachin added with a small sneer. We don't need to show you shit. Oh dear God. What the fuck, Izuku thought, a thought mimicked by everyone. Is that so? Aizawa asked. Damn right, Kachin began. Izuku could tell the telltales of one of Kachin's tirades. Don't come to us about the world being unfair. We damn well know, he added with a sneer. You're a teacher. You're here to teach. So teach. Stop running your mouth like the other teachers we had. Why didn't I go to Shiketsu? Izuku thought with a small smile because, despite the fact Kachin went on pretty much disrespected a teacher, a pro-hero at that, he was right. They were here to learn, not to be patronized, or to be coddled. They all knew that the world was unfair. They were here to learn to make it less unfair. A sentiment everyone shared because they were gazing at Aizawa with the same determined look Katsuki was giving him. TCH, Aizawa muttered. We'll see if you can put your money where your mouth is. Oh, for fuck's sake, stop taunting him. Izuku thought with a worse grimace as he approached Kachin, placed his hand on his shoulders, and moved him away before he decided to put his feet on his mouth and therefore mess with everyone. Before you try to murder him with exercise sensei, can you show us where we will live? Izuku said with a strained smile. I suppose that's logical, Aizawa replied. And manners, Katsuki added. Why do you insist on antagonizing the pro and our teacher? Momo asked, clearly outraged by all of this. God, if you hear me, please strike me down. Or at least toss me a liquor to kill, Izuku muttered to the sky. 2 minutes later. The large group made their way to the main room of the dorm, a large common room with several chairs, sofas, and a large TV set that instantly caught Izuku's attention. There was also a kitchen with 2 stoves and a large fridge. First floor is the common room Aizawa called board. Aside from the kitchen there are bathrooms, a laundry rooms for both boys and girls, he said as he pointed to a board put on the wall nearby, and tapped it. This, he began, is your room placement, boys on the left, girls on the right, only the 4th and 5th floors are exclusively male, he added. As for the empty rooms, use them as storage, but plan accordingly for what. It can be also a small workshop when you get your hero outfits and you need to make on-the-site modifications, or an armory or a cult site for Midoriya. Don't out me. Izuku hissed, making the room shake. As for chores, I'll let that you all decide, Aizawa grinned as he began to walk away. You got 3 days to unpack, get comfortable and prepare. Because on Monday, he said as he turned and smirked, I'm going to make you all cry blood. With that sentence uttered, Aizawa left the dorm, leaving 21 students. Kyoka, who was closest to Bakugo, slapped him on the back of the head. The fuck? He screamed as he held his head. I swear if he really roar us because of you, your kneecaps are going to decorate my bedroom, she hissed as she took her stuff and began to walk into her assigned room. To be fair, Izuku began, picking his stuff and looking at the board. He really doesn't need a reason to do that, but now that he does, he let the sentence linger. Oh, I'm on the 4th floor, he said with a grin as he walked away. Gonna be able to do a fast exit. Oh, hell, Melissa and Okako muttered at the same time, both not forgetting that Izuku, by all intentions, could jump off a building and walk of the fall as if it was nothing. Half an hour later, Rikido Soto was the first person to leave his room after unpacking and setting up shop, which consisted much of his cooking utensils and weights. His first destination after leaving his room was the kitchen. He had to see what kind of setup UA had left them to cook, which he hoped was upstanding because this is UA, and if something is not upstanding then something is wrong. The good news, once he arrived he spotted the kitchen and he was pleased to see that everything was beyond his wildest dreams. He was going to have so much fun cooking here. Many people back in his school mocked him for actually knowing how to cook. No one ever wondered why he did it. This was his way to deal with stress, cook the stress away, and serve it in a pie. The better news was that he wasn't alone for so long, as Izuku appeared not long after, carrying a large console on his hands, his fleshy ones. The others were occupied with cables. "Yo, Midoriya-san," Soto called, seeing Izuku kneel in front of the TV and place the console on the floor. "Yes, Soto-san," Izuku asked, turning to the large beefy boy. "Gonna make something for lunch. What do you think everyone will eat without complaining?" he asked. "Soup. Easy to make. Can add pretty much anything. Can't go wrong with soup," Izuku said as he began to attach the cable to the back of the TV with some difficulty. "Where the hell is the HDMI slot?" he muttered as he kneeled. Soto just shook his head, but acknowledged Izuku's suggestion. It was sound and it was easy to make. Now the question was soup of what? As he thought what to do, the common room began to be filled with teens that didn't wanted to be cooped in their rooms, among them Mina, who looked around with an appreciative look, giving the kneeling Izuku and the cooking Soto mischievous looks that they didn't notice. "UA is the best. All the eye candy you can have," she thought as she flopped on the sofa and watched Izuku finish whatever he was doing. "So, Midori," Izuku turned his attention to Mina, who called him. "What you doing over there?" she asked with a grin. "Installing my console, and what I assume will become the default movie player for us all because I didn't see anything aside from the TV that can play a movie," Izuku said as he stood up and walked to a nearby chair and sat in it. "Nice. Didn't saw any DVR to stream movies. I assume because UA must take security seriously," Mina mentioned. "They do," Melissa spoke as she suddenly appeared, an adapter of some sort in her hands. "You'll be hard-pressed to find a Wi-Fi hotspot in UA that doesn't have 10 encryptions. I am told this is for their cybersecurity suite. Just because criminals got quirks didn't mean that hackers suddenly got extinct," she added. "Well, there goes my multiplayer hours. Glad I downloaded all I needed," Izuku muttered with a pout. "And what's with that in your hand?" "An USB multi-adapter," Melissa mentioned as she went to the console, searched for the back, and then slotted the adapter to it, slowly extending the cable and letting the adapter to be visible. Instantly she had an USB inserted and ready to roll. "My laptop is dedicated to my work, so I figured I would turn Izuku's setup into a home theater. I mean, it's a X station. This thing puts most gamer PC rigs to shame," she added with a smile. "Also the big TV. We are going to see real quality shows, not that re-remade trash we saw before," Melissa pointed to Izuku. "I literally have the entire trilogy saved and on the console. We are not repeating JoJo's woke adventures even if you put a gun in my head," Izuku snarked with a smirk. "So, I gotta ask," Mina asked, seeing how more of the group began to arrive at the common room and mingle. "What's your history?" she asked, mindful how Okuko, who had just arrived, raised an eyebrow at her. Something spicy. And now the eyes were narrowed. "The only thing spicy in him is the fact he can toss beach ball-sized suns as grenades," Melissa teased. Says the girl who was being thirsted by another girl. "Oh, you asshole, we agreed to keep that quiet." Mina actually grinned at that information. This was gold, and if it wasn't for the fact those two acted like siblings she would have instantly tried to set them up, but she hasn't earned her Cupid wings by just setting people at random. There is science in this shit. Okay, not that I wanted to learn he can do that, because why wouldn't he be able to do that? Apparently he can toss the end times as a weapon at us and say fuck it, Mina reminded herself. "I mean, how you two met?" Izuku and Melissa both glanced at one another, then shrugged. "His quirk was the very first time we could study a permanent stockpile quirk with the ability of mutation, emitter and transformations types. After the Raxus disaster and the involvement of the troop and the knowledge of bows and T-dolls with quirks, it was decided Island was the safest place for him and his family to be before the trials," Melissa began. "Also, we hate the troop, so basically why don't shelter and nurture the first civilian to use bow blood to paint the halls red like if it was going out of fashion and make a T-doll run away," she added with a smirk. "So here he comes, this little guy, and he sees my watch and the first thing he says is Dremyo lock and asks when we give them their very own S-watches when he's getting activated. I don't get it," Zero and Kaminari said at the same time. "Sorry, game a joke. You had to play the game to understand it," Melissa teased. So 3 months in, and what we learned is that his quirk is a nightmare to decode. If you didn't set the computers well, it will cause them to explode by the sudden influx of data, and in a stroke of brilliance he decided to grow dark matter nodes in his nervous system. While I wasn't able to see the effects firsthand because my friends had decided my desk was, I had to get a new keyboard and mouse. And a whole new desk, to be honest. Okay, first, Gigiti Mineta said, cocking his head back and forward in a way his neck should have broken. Second, dude, that sounds painful and stupid, it was Melissa said. My computer had a direct telemetry connection to him, so imagine my surprise when I received data that continues, and ends with pain. For over 2 damn hours, dude, that stupid, Kaminari said. I had a well of dawn on. I was fine, Izuku argued. You grew dark matter nodes on your entire nervous system to manipulate gravity and mass. I'm surprised your head didn't go off like in Scanners, Melissa said with a shake of her head. So you pretty much had to baby Deku before he blew himself up, Bakugo hissed as he went to the kitchen and pretty much bullied his way into Soto's side. It wasn't that bad. He had a list of what he wanted and we went through the pros and cons on it. Besides that, we had a philosophical talk about the nature of power when he revealed that the first thing he manifested when he got the light was in fact stasis, or the darkness, Melissa revealed. I hate you, Izuku pouted as he looked away. There is no shame in the nature of the being. There is light and there is darkness. It is as it is. We are born in the dark, walk into the light and onto the dark once more, Tokoyami explained smoothly as the shadows in the room moved with something akin to mirth. Stasis is different, Izuku began. To wield the darkness at one point you must have felt that pit. That sense of hopelessness that is cold and covers you completely. It is from there that you understand the nature of stasis and to some degree of the darkness, Izuku said. Shit, Bakugo muttered in silence as he continued helping cook. That's grim, Tsuyu said. Light is life. Darkness is death. But both can be the other, in darkness life, in light death. Okay, enough with the edgy talk, Gyro said. Although some of it is definitely going to a song, I want to know something, Shield-san the punker rock girl said with a small grin. How you ended up here? Wanted to follow the steps of the walking calamity here. I will find an embarrassing weakness in you and exploit it with impunity, Izuku said. No, Melissa said. This is kinda weird, but my quirk manifested very late. Deku's manifested late as well, Bakugo called. Mine did as I was dying, she added. Everyone but Izuku blinked, shook their heads, and actually leaned in. So I was working on this top-secret project. Like top secret, only the board knew about this. Nanotech aimed for medical purposes called it Siva. I still can't believe you called it that, Izuku called out. Oh, pipe down, Izuku, I told you it won't end up like the Siva that killed the Iron Lords. Yes, that one. The one handled by a psychopathic AI that stared at the darkness and the darkness said hey, and it made it crazy. That AI, I knew it, Midoriya-chan embodies the darkness. It made a machine crazy, Tsuyu said as a matter of fact. Anyway, Melissa cut short any line of thought Tsuyu was going. It was ready, it was programmed and even had 3 failsafes and kill switch in case something like Izuku feared came to pass. Also, it was programmed for medical purposes instead of military applications, she said, taking a small moment to take her breath. Then the pedestal blew up. Next thing I remember was pain and a freaking shard of glass stuck right where my heart was. Also, Siva was nearly destroyed and I was hearing gunfire, she said. But, our island is pretty much a fortress, Soto said from the kitchen. How that happened? Nobody knows, Melissa shrugged her shoulders. The attackers were 10 international villains with death sentences, so nothing to lose on the last hurrah. As for me, I was in pain, lots of it, and in panic, she stated. I instantly activated Midnight Exigent Protocol and erased every scrap of information regarding Siva from the computer servers, then injected myself with what was left to safeguard it. She didn't miss the looks of shock from the teens. Woke up a week later, with abs, she stated. Siva has a directive. The Panacea Directive ensures muscular loss for comatose patients doesn't happen by bonding to the muscles and making them work while the patient is in coma. In my case, it continued working even after I woke up, she said. Okay. How does that relate to your quirk? Momo wondered, clearly fascinated by the story. Or was it Siva? Well, my quirk, like Izuku's, has been in a way, inactive. Unlike his, my trigger was more physical. My body had to be in certain shape, otherwise it would hurt me. Energy Hoarder is the name of my quirk, and it hoards kinetical, chemical, and electrical energy my body generates, and somehow multiplies it, she answered. Then Melissa, how half of the class made a face, like wondering how she got stuck with such a quirk. Anyway, since I spend a lifetime without a quirk, control has been an issue, So I use Siva and my S-Watch to cap energy hoarder to a certain level. Right now I can use 2% of the energy safely, and I can use 5% while running the risk of microfractures and muscle tearing. Jesus Christ, 5% and you tear yourself. What will happen if you go I don't know, 10-15%? Zero wondered. Best scenario, skin rupture with torn muscles but no ligament damage and microfractures and stress damage that can be repaired. At worst my muscles blow up, my ligaments snap, the bones shatter and the blood vessels just boom, she said, horrifying everyone but Izuku. Yeah, we are going to help you with that, Mina said seriously. I mean, I thought I had it bad with my acid, and even now I still do, but you, yikes, she said, tail waving around and nearly hitting Toru in the face. Trust me, I tried some things. Having access to Island vast database allowed me to find a lot of training techniques for quirks with similar issues. In my case, I had to train a lot, she stated, slightly flexing her arm and showing a bicep. Ask Izuku, I didn't have biceps. Hell, I got tired by watching him and he's the one with near unlimited stamina, she added. The benefits of paracausal energy, conduit physiognomy, and a near-perfect control of cells. Aizawa is going to kill you just to see you tired, she smirked at him. He tried already. Why do you think I have muscles too? A month of just training, day and night, Izuku said simply. I will admit his rough okay scratch that the attitude of sandpaper is a better description, Izuku continued. He'll try to break you, physically and sometimes emotionally. He didn't try much because Mom was around, with a knife, and he also had to focus on Era-chan and her quirk. Izuku trailed off, but then shook his head. The point is that he's gruff and look like he doesn't care, but I feel like he does. He's an underground hero, so they have to deal with the really ugly of the underworld. Most of us want to be limelight heroes, right? The majority nodded at Izuku's question. Well, the limelight doesn't have to deal with the monsters under the bed, on the closet, on your mind. So Shoto spoke for the first time. He has seen things we have not. You have a hero father, yes. Tsuyu asked to Shoto, who nodded. Has he ever talked about that? Yes. And? Tsuyu asked again. Midoriya-san analogy is right. They deal with the monsters, he said simply as he looked at Soto and Bakugu. Are you also making soba? Soba is for pussies, Bakugu called. I will end you, no one, Aidia began, chopping his hands like an actions figure. Is ending anyone? We are here to be heroes, not thugs, he added. So Bakugu-san, behave, so said Boy TCH, while sneering while Izuku just looked at the ceiling. Sure, behave. Gonna ask something else. Want me to grab the sun while I'm at it? Smother a black hole? Stare at the ever-present time and tell it to stop. No need for sass, Midoriya-san, Momo said with a smile of a saint, although it looked forced. Izuku pointed at Aidia. Asked Kachin to behave, he hissed. That's von Minderan. Incomprehensible. Bite me, Deku. Bakugu hissed from the kitchen. Also stop talking in tongues. I'm afraid you're going to summon something. Mineta yelled. I am not summoning nothing, Izuku said, then stopped. Well, maybe Dernavir, but I doubt it, Izuku mentioned. And this, Juvenia is? Mina asked. Is Dernavir? Dragon names are in on itself words of power, and he is a zombie dragon. No, just no, Momo began alongside Toru, who advanced at Izuku, something forming in her exposed arm, soon this being a sheet of paper and a pen. When she handed them to Izuku, he felt them, oddly warm. This is a waiver and a binding contract. If I have to, I will, but I will ensure you never summon something like that. Toru hold him. Wait, I never agreed to this. Izuku cried as Toru held his shoulder rather tightly, and he found she was rather strong. You're going to sign this, Momo declared. I am not. I'll be damned, you summon a zombie dragon. He lives in the soul can. It doesn't even exist, Izuku reminded. Considering that the light and the darkness shouldn't exist, yet they do alongside the sub-light terminology that we now call the Midoriya conundrum, the realm of the ideal masters might be real. Melissa put her 2 cents. Sign. Everyone but Tokoyami shouted. Melissa. Zuyu of High, Izuku exclaimed. Ruze US, stop talking in tongues. Everyone but Tokoyami shouted, again. No, please continue. This is enlightening. You're not helping. Bakugu would not admit it, even if you put a gun in his head and hands, but the idea of Deku summoning a zombie dragon was too much for him. So Shota Hisashi asked as he saw his longtime friend enter the teacher's room and sit. How it went. As I expected. Also, Bakugu-san has a chip on his shoulder the size of my head and pretty much challenged me to be a teacher. Brat Aizawa replied with the smallest hint of a smile. About time, Nemurai said from her seat while working on a computer. You can be a bit of an ass of the kids at the beginning. Also, That clicks with Bakugu's psych profile. At least the one Inuikuan was able to scrape by with the scattered interviews after the Hashima incident, the R-rated heroine said with a frown. We are going to make those visits to his office mandatory, and weekly for him to compile a better profile if all he could scrape of Bakugu was asshole mode on. Aizawa replied, making his colleagues roll their eyes at him. Yeah, Sekijiro-kan, or better known as Vladking, said as he entered the room and sat with a huff. At least your gremlin is consistent, Bad Batch. Hisashi asked. I wish the blood hero began. I got a solid group, can't tear the fabric of reality with their voice, but they are good kids. It's Monoma who's gonna be an issue in the future, he replied. Nito Monoma, the one with the stand. Hisashi asked. First, it's not a stand, Khan replied. It appeared behind him, floating and punches things. It's a stand, Hisashi said. Can't believe he got one. I want one. Well, if you can take that stick on his ass, please do. Monoma has a inferiority complex, a complex one at that. He cares for the others as I saw him help the others with their stuff, but mention 1A and Huboy Khan replied. Let me guess. He believes them to be arrogant due to them having experience in combat. Aizawa asked sarcastically. Take that sarcasm and choke on it, and yes he does. Khan shook his head and he turned his computer on. He was getting the class ready for a rally with the motto fuck 1A before Kendo knocked his ass and pretty much reminded everyone that they were their classmates and future teammates, killed the situation there and there. Khan replied with a sigh. If she pulls it again I'm going to buy her chocolates, in bulk for dealing with that shit, watch it. Nemurai said with a salacious smile. People might get the wrong idea, she stated. Bite me, Khan replied with a sneer. You and his highness have to deal with a class that has a kid that made the troop his bitch. I have to deal with a fucking stand user with an inferiority complex and a strange hunger for bread. How many breads have you eaten in your life? 13 said from the sidelines, a smug tone in her voice. I hate every single one of you, Khan said with a pout, picking several folders and opening one, shaking his head. So, anyone still able to wrap their heads around the changes? He asked out of the blue. New teachers. The new security. The kids' quirks. The world right now. Aizawa asked. All of the above, everyone chorused. What can I say? Aizawa began. Everything has changed so fast. By this time I was stalking a new drug ring that was just starting. Now I am in charge of 21 kids with overpowered quirks, one of them who I know for a fact can set a fission out of freaking air, not to mention what happened during the last year. It has been a testing year, Yagi said as he strolled into the teacher's room in his skinny form. Trust me, I am not exactly happy either. My niece in all but blood is here and I am biting the urge to carry her back to the States. If anyone knows how dangerous things can get, it's me, just because you're missing your stomach and a lung doesn't make you an expert in heroics, All Might, Nemurai mentioned in a teasing manner. Also, I have over 40 years of hero work under my belt. I can body everyone on this room before Aizawa can even think on using his quirk, and I caved the head of the Kappa. Okay, but also fuck you, Nemurai added as she saw Gran Torino enter, and he heard everything. Geez, what crawled on your ass and died, Toshi? You never had this level of sass ever. Also never openly flaunted you could body anyone, the aged hero said as he went to one of the mini fridge and pulled something out of it. Sensei, I barely interacted with any heroes. Also I blame young Midoriya, he replied. You can't blame the kid for your sudden attitude shift, Khan stated. He infused my quirk with solar light and grew tattoos, so yeah I can, All Might said with a smirk, one that died as he saw the work ahead of him. Now how you make a study plan? The same way Midoriya added light into you, Aizawa replied with a smirk. Very carefully. Go back into your sack and hibernate. Forever. I wish Mina had to admit, the Katsuden was to die for. In addition, Midoriya was ready to kill anyone that looked at his food for more than 3 seconds. Guess he likes pork, she thought as she placed the dishes for Midoriya to clean, something he volunteered to. Apparently, when you have extra arms you have to wash dishes. It is like a rule written in the stars or something. The only reason Shuji wasn't doing that as well was that he is in the common room alongside Melissa and Mineta, working on the sketches for his hero suit alongside Yaro Orozu. Melissa, having worked alongside the man that designed All Might's first suit, her dad, gave her some authority on how to design one. Structural weaknesses, materials, what to add and what not to. Melissa pretty knew the ins and outs of hero costume designs, at least the structural part. Don't ask her about making one because she has the same issue as Mineta and Yaro Orozu when they showed her the sketches of their first suits and Mina got a peek at them. The fact both said it just works didn't help in the fact Mineta looked like he had an iron diaper and Yaro Orozu was aiming to give everyone man she crosses a boner, or cause a car crash. Yes, she gets it, the girl hit puberty hard, doesn't mean that she has to give other girls her age a complex and try to see if she can make the HPSC rewrite the rules about hero costumes, just like Midnight caused them to do. Yeah, no, Mina suddenly butted in, plopping between Shuji and Momo and seating, startling the duo. Momo, I love you, but your costume is going to cause a lot of legal issues, she mentioned. My quirk needs it. I need it, Momo replied. Never I imagined I would live to hear those words, Mineta muttered to himself with wide eyes. But why? He also never imagined he would utter those words. My original quirk, creation, requires my skin to be exposed for me to create anything I need from my lipids. Imagine me making a sword while I'm wearing pants. I'll tear them apart, she said simply. However, after the mutation, I believe I suffered the least mutation, at least according to my family doctors, she added. And it is? Mina asked. My creations come faster, Momo simply replied, sitting properly, her hands on her lap. Or to be more precise, my quirk received a boost in its speed. My body can now store 3 times the amount of nutrients and lipids required for me to use creation. The only backdraw I encountered is that, well, I get hot. Is this a humble brag on the fact you could totally pass as an adult woman because you have an adult body? Mineta asked with an incredulous look. No. Momo replied. I mean, I store heat a little too well. Fat in the body is meant for emergency nutrients and insulant. I have 3 times that, Momo replied, feeling a poke to her side of a pouting Mina. Without even looking as if you added that, Mina groused. Lucky you, she hissed as her horns seemed to shake in annoyance. Eshido-san, I can hear your horns, Izuku whispered or talked from the kitchen. We can see her horns move, as a rattlesnake, Shuji said. Melissa just approached Mina and poked one of them, instantly gasping. Oh my god, an evolutionary faux pas, she said. Did you know this, Izuku? She asked the boy from the kitchen. It's her mutation. I think aside from the tail and her enhanced anatomy, she might have gained a way to warn others that she's dangerous, aside from the, barbed tail with a really pointy end, the acid and the fact she's fucking pink, Mineta stated. You know that me being pink is because of my quirk, right? Mina asked in an annoyed tone. No. Haven't you seen frogs in South America? Small like my thumb, they are bright like fucking neon signs and no animal eats them because they are poisonous as hell, Mineta replied. So that's what Shield-san meant by faux pas, Shuji said. Aside from her coloration being a clear warning to anyone that she is dangerous, her horns now vibrate like a rattlesnake as a secondary warning. Something not needed, but it happened. You guys are dicks and using to not focus on the fact Yaomomo pretty much has heating issues and can't get fat, Mina pouted. Still hate you for that. Well, Siva won't let me get fat. It uses my own fat reserves to fuel the replication, Melissa replied. I hate you too, Mina replied with an even bigger pout as her horns showed her displeasure, by shaking without control and actually emitting a sound akin to an actual rattle. Wait, we are hearing this now. How come Midoriya-san heard them before? Mineta asked. Her horns seemed to be attuned to stasis. For some reason, both boys and Momo and Melissa glanced at Mina's horns with an incredulous look. Don't look at me, I was about to chop them out because I learned they were attuned to the end of the universe, Mina said. But Mom was all about no, Mina-chan. They look cool, they are a tie to the universe itself. And I love my mom, but I think the only reason she doesn't want to cut my horns is that I would have a calamity on speed dial, Mina said. I am not a calamity, Izuku said as he approached them, hands cupped together and holding a miniature sun between them. Please put out the sun, Momo said, then blinked. I can't believe I just said that. I am drying my hands, Izuku said. Towels. They were invented for that reason, Momo reasoned as she saw Izuku put out the sun in his hands and sit, looking at the sketches on the table. Please tell them what you found out about me during our Q&A sessions, Momo asked politely to Izuku. Her quirk jacked up her body functions, Izuku said simply, missing the look of utter betrayal Momo was giving him. How come? Shuji asked. When I was doing your Q&A, I wondered if any of you had any kind of side effects to the mutations, things that would be missed due to the fact your quirks got cranked to 11, Izuku began. I found one, your bodies, he said simply. Technically speaking, it is more like an evolutionary jump rather than a flaw, Momo began. But how they happened can worry anyone, she said, making the group, mostly Melissa, glance at her and Izuku. Yaoru-san quirk uses lipids as fuel to trigger a reaction in her skin that permits her to create just about anything she wants as long as she knows the atomic makeup of said item, Izuku explained. But something no one noticed before is that aside having to expose skin to do so, her quirk activation generated heat, he said. Like a 3D printer, Melissa muttered, then her eyes widened, looking at Momo straight in the eyes. Are you still thermoregulatory able? She asked. I am, Momo nodded, but understood Melissa's hesitation. What Midoriya-kun is trying to explain is that our mutations somehow interacted with our bodies and enhanced several functions. In my case, my body's innate ability to self-regulate. Well, anything, Momo replied. She can cook her muscles using the heat created by creation to prepare for a long training session. Control her breath better, most of her functions, to be honest, Izuku said. The heat that emanates from her quirk activation is increased, basically doubling if not tripling the speed of her creations at a small cost of calories she can store without issue, Izuku mentioned. So, that's what you meant by jacked, but I still don't get something, Mineta began. How come she ain't some sort of Amazonian beauty like Uraraka-san? Didn't she get big due to her quirk messing up her body as well? Yes, Izuku said in a strange hiss that sounded akin to a promise of a painful death, for some reason. What I imagine is that Yaro Orozu-san is like Uraraka-san in that regard, but different due to their quirks, he hissed. Gravity effects stronger on larger objects. Ergo Okako being larger than the norm, Melissa began. Black holes are gravity nightmares due to their sizes. Suns are gravity wells and central focus on star systems because they exert gravity on the objects around them, Melissa explained. Meanwhile, Momo's issue is different. Fuel for her quirk, meaning everything got updated and compacted for better use. She can store more fat and calories, but I bet you her weight tripled, not because she's fat, but because she's denser than she was before, she added. At least that what seems to be the case, Melissa added as an afterthought. You got all that from an explanation? Mina wondered, clearly impressed. Well, that and studying and making gear. Support items for heroes are usually aimed to their specific need, so you need to know how their quirks operate, how their bodies operate, Melissa explained. Coupled that with some games I played that required you to pay attention and think fast, and then this guy over who has spent the last 10 years of his life studying quirks, dissecting them and giddying playing with their insides comes along and lays it down in a way you can understand it. Oh, I'm sorry. He lays it down so only those who study quirkology and medicine can. I don't giddily play with their insides. You make me look like a mad scientist or an incel. Aren't incels extinct? Mineta asked Shuji, who just shrugged. Anyway, now that's out of the way. Izuku, can you help us? Melissa asked. Help with your hero suits? He asked. Yes. Melissa shouted. I am sure you have yours already ready. I hit a snag with mine and we are trying to convince these two that A. Momo is walking into a midnight incident and B. Minoru is about to wear a diaper. I am not walking into a disaster, Momo replied. I need exposed skin for my quirk to work. I am not wearing a diaper. Mineta replied. It's a bowl, you know, because grapes on my head. I am going for a fruit motif. Izuku blinked, and actually hissed uncomfortably. Yeah, no, Izuku said. Melissa-san, I literally needed help for mine. Mom helped and I spend literally months trying to make mine. What makes you think I have any idea how to make a hero suit sketch when my early concepts looked like a psychotic cartoon rabbit? Isn't Mako pretty much a psychotic waifu rabbit? Mineta asked. No, she is. Don't change the subject, Izuku hissed, rubbing the sides of his head. Okay, how about this? I bring my sketches and between all of us maybe we can make something for these two and maybe I can find flaws in mine and help Melissa-san. How about it? Sounds like a plan, Mina said. Maybe I'll update mine. After what happened I haven't updated mine. I mean I have to add a hole for my tail, Mine replied as she followed Izuku away, surely to get their stuff. Ori, Mina, can you get into my room and get my laptop? Isn't locked, but if you touch my Pepsi Man statuette you're dead, Melissa called as Mina simply grinned and flashed her a thumbs up, passing Bakugo on the way. The fuck you extras are doing? He asked with a scowl on his face. First, I am no extra. I literally got attempted murdered via bomb. That's main character thing, Melissa replied. Second, we are preventing these two from wearing these, she said, reaching for a paper and flashing them to Bakugo, who made a face. Third, we decided then an impromptu group session on how to make a hero suit and ours are good is in order, mostly to mess with Izuku and his psychotic rabbit suit. I am not missing this shit. Be back. It was a pretty night. The moon was full and the stars shone brightly on the night sky. It was the perfect area for one of his subordinates to mount a guard. Wolfram looked at the night sky, then at a nearby tree with a thick canopy and leaves. He could barely make it, but he could see three eyes leaning on one of the branches, looking at the horizon and shifting his sight from time to time. With a sigh he moved away into a shack nearby, passing several guards armed with archaic AK-47 rifles, reliable but old as hell. Each one of them gave him a contemptuous look, but the night and their dark skin hid the worst of their glares to him. Not that he cared. He was leaving this place tomorrow alongside his team. It was one of those missions he took that made him regret ever becoming a subordinate of All for One. going to Africa to protect a local warlord from another warlord and the government who has no chill whatsoever with them and was willing to nuke them from orbit. Therefore, they took a bunch of kids and used them as meat shields. He didn't enjoy working under a warlord. He was okay with the kidnapping. Is a dog-eat-dog world out there, and one must have any advantage possible to survive it. He didn't enjoy working under the warlord because half of the time the man was high on cocaine, snorting it like if it was going out of fashion, but he could afford it, and Wolfram Services because he was mining for diamonds, and he had hit Motherlode. Such was the hit that he was able to pay for Wolfram and even some more because he was high as a kite and, in Wolfram's opinion, about to snort his own nose out of his face. Not that it mattered. The contract was for 3 weeks, and 3 weeks were up, so he and his team leave tomorrow, no questions asked, and the dick better not stab him on the back, otherwise he's going to shove one of those pikes up his ass. Entering the shack, seeing another member of his team, a woman nicknamed Nerd working on a laptop, looking serious as ever. Nerd, Wolfram began, catching her attention, brown eyes glancing to his side before turning to the screen again. Anything new? The Ugandan government officially requested the aid of the United States government to clear the warlords in their land. They deploy in a week's time, she replied simply. There's a catch, Wolfram said, because dealing with the USA was like making a wish to the monkey's paw. You get what you want, but there's a price to pay. Yes, Nerd replied, slightly moving away and cranking her neck. The USA government seemed to have a new super weapon and they are eager to test it, and no one will shed a tear to a drug addict, child kidnapper, town rapist warlord, Wolfram summarized. And anyone caught with him, kidnapped included, he added. Indeed, Nerd nodded. The Ugandan government has a clear policy regarding warlords and anyone who aids them, willing or otherwise. Zero tolerance. So everyone here will be dead by the week, Wolfram said with zero sarcasm, eyes focused on a wall. Call Echo, tell him to heat up the mammoth. We leave at midnight, just as our contract ends. In 1 hour, Nerd replied smoothly. I'll have everyone know, she said as she turned to her side and procured a military-grade walkie-talkie and began to talk in it. Wolfram paid it no mind. Nerd would get the job done. She always did. What he was worried about was the sudden entrance of the US government after that clusterfuck with the troop. One would expect that after the death of nearly everyone in the higher echelons of power, the country would be more focused on dealing with the internal threats. And in a sense they were. Heroes were giving green light to basically shoot to kill against the troop. And the army was deployed in mass, inside to ensure that no nasty surprises like what happened in Japan happened to them. The results spoke for themselves. While Japan dealt with a nationwide freaking attack, the United States' ultra-aggressive stance against the troop had paid dividends and ensured that by November they could have presidential elections without the worry of the troop attacking. There is what had Wolfram worried. The country recovered excessively fast. The leadership got replaced incredibly fast, much faster than in any other place where something similar might have occurred. Not there. In less than a year the lost positions were filled once more and the country had a plan of action and reaction against the troop, and a successfully amicable campaign between the two presidential candidates had eased the worries of many that this might instigate another political war. It didn't happen, and now with a new president and new politics, things seemed to be going well. Far too well. He wasn't stupid. He knew what this was all about. The super weapon was a way to dissuade anyone from attacking them again. If the 7-foot-tall muscle-bound monster that is Star and Stripe and the inflated defense budget won't, then whatever this weapon is might. Testing on a country that historically had been knee-deep in wars over territory and resources and had a politic of zero tolerance on warlords and their supporters, but just now was asking for military aid was just the icing on the cake. They could test it with impunity, without having the UN and ONG breathing down their necks about violating someone's right and this and that. He wasn't risking it. He hasn't lived this long because he took things and hoped for the best, plans over plans and being careful, especially in other countries where he didn't knew their heroes or their military force could lead to his death. No, he was smart, and also followed his gut, and right now his gut was telling him to fuck right off. An hour later they were doing just that, an APC, of what could be called an 8-wheeler monster with tank-grade armor and enough space for his team and equipment, were leaving the camp of the local and probably soon to be dead warlord. Wolfram actually looked at one of his men who was giving him an odd look. Something on your mind, Cook? He asked the man in question, average build, black hair, and brown eyes. There was nothing remarkable about him, despite the fact that Wolfram has seen this guy make explosives that can tear a tank in 2 out of anything you can find in a kitchen. Yeah, no, maybe, Cook said, sounding somewhat hesitant. Boss, be level with me. Why we leave this quick? The last time we left a place this fast was when the freaking ATF tried to get us and only got a house on fire and half their team dead. And that was on a gut feeling. What happened now? Nerd believes we were in the hot zone. The local government asked for support to the Americans, and they are going to use it as an excuse to test a new weapon of theirs. So I decided to leave, without breaking our contract or angering the drugged-out warlord, Wolfram stated simply, leaning towards Cook who looked concerned. God, this is the world we live in now. The Americans get to test new weapons on foreign soil, Cook muttered with a shake of his head. Didn't the Americans test nuclear bombs on Japan's soil? Three Eyes asked. No, they did a test on their own soil, but they wanted to see what would happen when you use on a populated city, Wolfram replied with a deadpan tone. My kind of people, a slow, almost tired female voice droned out of the end of the mammoth, kneeling in the middle of the seats and almost looking ready to keel over and either fall and sleep or die, hard to say with her silver hair covering her head and most of her face. Yeah, you would like that, zombie, Cook muttered with a small frown, but then shook his head. Still, why don't we go faster? When America tests a new gun, it tends to go boom. And it tends to be big boom. Everyone froze. Immediately Wolfram went to the back of the APC and looked. His eyes widened. Toretto, he whispered. Toretto, he screamed this time. Full speed now. The APC sped up as Wolfram turned to Zombie, who simply jammed her fingers on the metallic ground and breathed in. Immediately the truck began to turn transparent, including the ones inside as the APC sped up. As it did, the team was able to see the number of explosions that began to form from the camp they had left. They were far enough that no one would notice, especially with the thick canopy of the trees in the area. But that could change. Nerd, call the exfil team, tells them to be ready. He shouted as he saw the explosions get larger and more pronounced, but distance ensured that he wouldn't have much to worry about, especially as the mammoth sped up into the illegal runway and the cargo plane waiting for them. It was the longest 15 minutes in his life, to be perfectly honest. Not even when they reached the runway and entered the cargo plane and took off as fast as they could, he felt safe. It wasn't until they were away, far away, right above international waters and far from that mess, that Wolfram actually took a deep breath to calm himself. Boss, he heard Cook call him. I really hate when your gut is right. Me too, Cook, Wolfram said with narrowed eyes on the horizon. Me too. The fire raged all over the camp. There was death and the stench of burned corpses. The smell of blood was mixed alongside the smell of acid and gunpowder. Nearby a man lay on the ground. He gasped for breath as he tried, in vain, to keep the wound on his stomach to keep pouring blood to the ground. But it was in vain. He could vaguely feel something else oozing out. It was, in a sense, with the blood loss, that he might be feeling his guts coming out as well. It was that feeling of despair that made him look up, seeing an armored figure above him, a gray armor with thigh-fitting clothing underneath, like plastic and leather mixed together. The helmet was the strangest thing. The only discernible thing in it was the two holes for the eyes that were covered by what he assumed were lenses. He couldn't do much more crunch, because his head was crushed by the boot of the armored individual. Red 4, double tap with your gun, not your feet, another armored figure stated as he lazily rose his right arm to his side and let out a jet of flames that set a cabin on fire, causing the people inside to scream. Sorry, Striker 1, I was just testing the augmentations and the boot's stress limit. Sure, you were, Striker 1 mentioned with a drone. Look, I get it. Super strength, so you get curious. Do that in your free time and with a testing team. Now we are on a mission. Efficiency and professionalism. No playing around, Striker 1 admonished. Yes, Dad, Red 4 said with a chuckle. But you gotta admit, your entrance was way too flashy. Too almighty, Red 1 just shrugged his arms. Okay, I'll admit I am a hypocrite. Moving on, he added as he took a rather harsh step and the area behind him lit up, alongside the 3 guards that screamed in pain after being set on fire. Green 2. Did you find any stragglers? Striker 1 called over the comm line. A second later the ground shook. Both men felt it and how it felt underground. Then it stopped, and the comms came alive. Not anymore, came a smooth feminine voice over the line, making both men realize that she just collapsed the mines and probably crushed a bunch of hostile under tons of rocks. Any attempt at a reaction was interrupted as another figure emerged, this one holding a laptop in one hand and dragging the would-be warlord with the other. Orange 3, how it went? Striker 1 asked. As well as one can expect, Chief, Orange 3 replied with some accent in her voice. Warlord over here, she lifted the man by the head. Died 2 minutes ago. He snorted coke over the same desk. He could count the diamonds. The microcrystals the unrefined diamonds release got snorted and tore his veins apart, she said. But was able to get some things like. Striker 1 said as he saw Red 4 lift a truck, exposing 2 people under it. then slam it down, crushing them. He hired Anastasia Priority Target 5, Wolfram and his team. They left an hour ago. By this point there is no use of hunting them, she replied. She ain't going to be happy, Boss Red 4 replied with a frown under his helmet, a mask. She wants his ass nailed to a cross. She believes he's responsible for the attack on I Island in November. Intelligence disproves that claim, but she out for blood, Striker 1 added. Most of her priority targets are in Japan. We have no way to get in without causing an international incident, Orange 3 stated, turning around. Besides, this was a test run, one of many, she added. Agreed, Striker 1 replied as he activated the general comm lines. This is Striker 1. Mission complete. All hostiles neutralized. Over, acknowledged Striker 1. Be advised you are to remain in the area to transfer duties to the local army. Over, Wilco. Over and out, Striker 1 then turned to the team. You heard that, team. Do a mop-up, find any stragglers and finish them. I don't like that much, boss. If I'm being honest, Red 4 replied. Don't get me wrong, I'll put a terrorist in a heartbeat, but I understand. But remind yourself of this. We are soldiers. We follow orders, no matter how unappealing they might be, because no one else will. This is the price we have to pay to protect others. Even heroes, we get dirty so they walk squeaky clean. I get it, don't get me wrong, Boss Red 4 argued. Pops and Gran hammered that clear the day I enlisted. But he said, suddenly perking up and motioning with his head behind Striker 1. Still doesn't help when you have to, you know, being told you have to do this to actually doing the deed. I know, Striker 1 said, looking at the direction Red 4 was looking, sporting a woman holding a child, and running away after freezing for a second. The greatest of sacrifices, he began, raising his hand, fingers poised to snap, right at the fleeing woman. Require the greatest of wills, snap. Fuhum. The woman and child were consumed in a white jet of fire that rose to the sky and tore the terrain they once were placed. Not even a scream they uttered. It was instant. I hope we never do that to our own, Orange 3 stated solemnly. We won't, Striker 1 stated firmly. We are the line in the sand. Anyone who dares to cross it to attacks those we cherish, they will learn really quickly that the Silverbacks are here to protect and serve. Shigaraki wondered about the base, our home of the League. Red eyes slightly dimmed after a disastrous raid that, any other time, would have him rage in ways no man should rage. In this case, however, he didn't, because his raid team were a bunch of newbies who paid for boosted gear and knew shit about the raid. He still can't believe that pay-to-win still exists. Then again, anyone will pay anything for just about anything done, less time spent. Fucking pusses. Ass munches. Moronic whales, I hope they reach their credit cards' limits and their parents cave their asses in, he muttered darkly. Sheesh, what died in you? Shigaraki hissed as he turned around and spotted Mustard, working on a workbench on something. It looked like bullets. Bad raid, bad LFG, bad, everything, Shigaraki hissed with some anger. What are you working at? He asked Mustard. Oh, this, the newest villain asked. Ever since I learned about Midoriya, I imagined that at any point we might cross paths. Considering that Bows and T-Dolls didn't survive him, I figured I might try to stack the cards in our favor if that ever happens, he replied simply. With Shigaraki began, picking one of the bullets and inspecting it. It looked like a hollowed spiral or one of those knives Toga was really looking forward to have. He did note that the inside of the bullets was spiked. Okay, what I am looking at? Specialized bullets to be used against regenerators, Mustard replied. Jackal recommended them. Also your sensei. Kinda odd if you ask me, but whatever he said. These bad boys will lodge into flesh, tearing it and literally moving it into the center. Try to remove it means removing the flesh as well. And since that's attached and regenerators have no control when they regenerate, imagine this thing getting stuck under your skin, your muscles, inside you. Not bad, Shigaraki said with an appraising look. But your little snub won't accept these things. They are too big. Jackal's hooking me with one of his guns. He said don't trust anything you can buy in a store. Sometimes you have to go deeper, as long you know what you're doing. Shigaraki said, looking at the masked boy. A question that had been nagging him for a while bubbled up. Okay, I gotta ask, Shigaraki began, bringing a chair and sitting. Why you joined? He asked. When Jiran brought your profile, I thought you were like Darby and Toga. Not exactly well here, he said, tapping his head. Or you owed something to Sensei, but you don't, so what's the story? For a moment Mustard sighed, stopping on his work, then turned to Shigaraki. I hate pampered people, he began. They don't understand what real work is like, what is to toil and basically roar yourself for what you have, Mustard began. It always grinded my gears, something fierce meeting people like that. All talk, no work, Mustard continued. But what pushed me was what they thought of people like me. Oh, you have to work, poor thing. I don't get it. Why work? Your quirk is so powerful, why you train it? Things like that. They never got it. You want something, you have to work for it, he said. Those comments made me realize that heroes are the same. Shigaraki actually rose an eyebrow at that. That this society is the same. Pampered, weak. They don't get that hard work gets it all. That at the end of the day, he said, turning to Shigaraki, we are the ones doing the heavy lifting. So, one day I woke up, found my dad's old snub pistol, and kept it around. Then at school one of those assholes began taunting me, saying things that get you killed. There Shigaraki's eyes widened. The cafeteria massacre, he breathed. That was you. Mustard nodded. They all had quirks to stop me while I used my gas and held my breath. None did it. Hoping a hero would come to save them, I put a bullet between their eyes. Bang, 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 he said lazily. After that, I realized that if me, whose quirk hurts him without this, he tapped his helmet, could take on a cafeteria full of powerful but lazy people, then what would happen if I apply myself for my goal? And your goal is? Shigaraki asked, clearly interested in his story. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times, Mustard quoted. I aim to create hard times so strong men can rise, and keep it that way, he said. That's the only way anything will change. No more good times, no more pampering. If we have to destroy it all, so be it. Shigaraki stared at Mustard, a small smile forming on his cracked lips. Now I see why you get along with Sensei so well, he said. Yeah, let's destroy it all, Mustard. You get it, Shigaraki said, clearly delighted. This society is all deceased, hero worship, quirk worship. It has made them weak and they clinch on it desperately, using all might as a linchpin to hold it all together. Yes, poor schmuck, holding society all on his lonesome, Mustard said, picking one of the bullets. We should relieve him of the burden, don't you think? Oh yes, I agree 100%, Shigaraki said, eyeing the bullet with a grin. You know what would be better? If there was no one to follow up after his fall. Oh yes, Mustard said. He, and by extension, every other hero is weak men, and we live in hard times, so we are owed our due for the hard times they made us live by, Mustard maliciously stated, eyeing the bullet. Shigaraki could already tell. He would get along with Mustard just fine. Monday, UA Academy, morning. A song blared on the small Bluetooth speaker set on the kitchen counter, a beat that seemed to be of an old era. The kitchen was a blur of activity as everyone was eating their breakfast and getting ready for the day. Boys in uniforms, but in a different presentation, pristine and proper, slack and non-caring. One was unable to tie his tie until a tall girl tied it for him, making him blush, and her in turn. Girls in uniforms smoothed their clothes and fixed their skirts to not show a lot. There were bags already set on the threshold of the living room, ready to be picked. Then as one they finished their breakfast and set the plates on the dishwasher, to be cleaned in the evening. Right now they were cutting it short. As one they all picked their bags and marched onwards. They were all doom-driven. Chapter end notes. So, what can be said now? This month has been crazy. The world seems to be falling apart by the seams faster than last year. Everyone is at everyone's throats, and the future is uncertain. For once I am afraid of what might occur. Granted, I never imagined I would live during these times, pandemic notwithstanding. Then again, I think no one dared to think the same. In these trying times, we must hold on to what keeps us sane and healthy. So guys, I want you to be safe out there. Be happy as well. This is HYPN0S signing off. Have a good ready, guys. Chapter Summary 0 to Heroes UA opens strong. Aizawa holds little back and expects too much in return, as expected of someone who was caught unprepared and lost something precious in return. Never again, he swears. If he has to break them, he will, as long as they are ready. His Purple Highness and the other teachers have other ideas. Chapter notes. Hire all. HYPN0S here. I hope I didn't keep you waiting too much. So the last chapter was in January. I don't recall much, only that I had high hopes for this year but got dashed away. I can't even express how fucked up this is now. No, really, we came out of a pandemic, and instead of working together and coming out of this together, someone decided, nah, war because fuck everything, me and my goals first. It made me depressed. Depressed enough that I forgot to update the story and not even answer several comments. Also, the Witch Queen, which kicks ass, like holy shit. That twist was chef kiss, not to mention Elden Ring, a From Software game that is actually forgiving, but still kicks my ass because it From Software, so it quotes Mike Tyson in every line of code. It has "I'll fuck you till you love me" kinda quote. Also, Chapter 350. I knew that Darby had some relation with the Doc and AFO, but I believed he was a next-generation sapient Nomu, like Krogiri, because they had to work with a burnt corpse instead of something that wasn't destroyed beyond recognition. This one came out wrong. I mean, the clues were there on his identity, but 350 shows us that he somehow survived having 100% of his body burnt into a crisp, and it took the doctor and AFO 3 years to save his life and grow new skin. And then AFO gave up on Darby because that kid was too damn angry for his own good. So here we are, the next chapter. It took me a while because I was adding what you guys had been requesting, an explanation of the new quirks and what the changes were to the kids, which was hard because it relies on science while adding a new explanation to quirks that weren't affected, like ponies. It took a while because I had to ensure it fits the theme of modified and roided up and with their original weakness literally taken down. I hope I made a good job on that. Some quirks weren't addressed, but that's because I am planning on explaining them in the next chapter. So sit back and enjoy, people. I apologize for the delay again. So here's my way to make up to you all. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter 4. Zeros to Heroes. Aizawa wanted to sleep. He really wanted to sleep. But with his purple highness around, that was practically impossible. Despite his age, the man was as spirited as he was when he first met him. Maybe that was why he got along with All Might so well. Both radiated sunshine and rainbows and optimism. Aizawa knew that his highness was semi-retired. He only helped with logistics and kept in shape, but only participated in combat if the situation required it, like when the troop attacked last year. This was his way of retiring, passing the torch and the wealth of experience he had accumulated throughout the years. Same with All Might and Gran Torino. Torino was the oldest hero he had seen in active service, or as active he can be, and with the real possibility of All Might retiring, there wouldn't be any heavy hitters to intimidate the villains to stick on the shadows. As he saw his new students fill out the classroom and take a seat, placing their bags nearby, Aizawa's mind began to wonder if he too was ready for this. Barring Shield, the other 20 had seen the worst of the worst, the depravity, and had to fight for their lives, and they all had crazy powerful quirks to boot, and he had to teach them. Teach them not to be him, because despite what others think, his lifestyle is not something he wished on anyone or his habits. It wasn't long before the last student had been seated when he felt his phone vibrate, indicating to him that Khan's class was also present in its totality. They could begin. It took you a minute to fill in. Aizawa began. In a minute a lot of things can happen. Work faster. Every second counts. Sigh. Aizawa actually heard his purple highness sigh. What my obtuse and socially stunned former student means to say is that improvement is a slow road you should all endeavor into walking with diligence. His purple highness began. Welcome to Class 1A. I am told you all already know each other, which is good. His highness began. This is the first time in UA history, I am told, that both hero classes had 2 teachers and an extra student, so let's savor this moment. Okay, moment over, Aizawa said after 2 seconds of silence, his face somewhat set and tired and done as he looked at the class. I can't follow the line of thought that Nedzu traced for this to happen, but I know it starts with a mook in the Ministry of Education. What follows of the logic of everything's fine and don't worry about it is just a psychotic episode, and things that make me lose hope in humanity. The way he delivered the line made some of the teens want to laugh, especially with his face set in a perpetual frown. Because of this I am stuck with you Hellions and teach to not get killed. I am looking at you Midoriya. Just because you can toss suns doesn't mean you're immune to your self-recklessness and complacency. Aizawa wanted to admit that the look Izuku gave him was one of either you're right or I'm going to punch you. He honestly couldn't tell. In any case, this and 1B are special cases. Of the 42 students, only 5 weren't exposed to the gas that caused the mutations, so we are stuck with a bunch of overpowered teens that think they can take on the world because their quirks are powerful, Aizawa said. We are not. Momo answered asked, which was an honest answer to what Aizawa was insinuating. Whatever the case may be, this leads me to the task of ensuring that you learn valuable skills that don't get you killed in the field and destroy bad habits that will get you killed on the field, he reminded. Which leads us to today's work, His Highness said. In your desks are your new gym clothes. You will all go to the locker rooms, change and meet us in the courtyard. There alongside Vlad King and Midnight, you in Class 1B will be testing your quirks. HPH, His Purple Highness stated. We will put you in a series of tests to draw a baseline on where you stand and what to improve and what weaknesses you might have and hammer them down, HPH stated as he saw Aidia raise his hand. Yes, Aidia-kun. Sensei, is it wise for both classes to be together? Wouldn't be better if it was done separately? Of course, he speaks logic, Aizawa breathed. Yes, but I am contractual obligated to say that this is done to minimize confrontations and increase cooperation between both classes, as both are, at one point going to be working together, Izawa droned. So from stopping us to develop a rivalry that will hurt us all in the long run, Melissa muttered. Whoa, UA is so ahead of other schools. Other places actually encourage rivalry between classes. Jackasses, don't be deluded, Izawa stated simply. Hero work is hyper-competitive by its nature alone. Rivalries form whenever you want them or not. All Might isn't even aware he formed a rivalry with Endeavor of all people, or that is one-sided. Some of the teens chuckled at that. They loved the symbol of peace, they really did, but sometimes he was also a blockhead. They loved him for that too, he was their blockhead. So now that was said, pick your uniforms and change. You got 2 minutes. HPH hit Izawa in the back of the head without even looking in his direction. He means you have 10 minutes to find the lockers, change and find, and meet us in the courtyard, he added. Because he forgets you are first years, don't know the school layout, and therefore you might get lost. Just follow the signs and you'll be fine. If worst comes to worst, ask an upperclassman. That's illogical. Your expectations are illogical. Men's locker rooms. Hiro Kirishima knew that from here on out, things would be different. Yet things remained the same in some areas, like the locker rooms. Back in his and Mina's school, whenever they had PE, they had to go to the locker rooms and change, one for men and one for women, and despite popular belief and very old memes, boys in the locker room do not engage in blood rituals to ask for good fortune and destroy their enemies, and girls do not gossip till the end of time about boys while in their underwear. Mina said so it must be true, at least on her side. 2 years ago, someone brought a bunch of traffic cones to wear like hats and made a trial to a guy who had reminded the teacher about homework. His punishment had been trial by dodgeball. He didn't make it. Another thing that didn't change about locker rooms, you tended to see things about your future classmates that couldn't be explained. They had to be seen to be believed. Like when Kyoka said that Izuku had a full-on tat sleeve, no one believed her. Now, however, good God, is not a tat sleeve, Denki muttered. Is a freaking full-body tattoo, he added. The fuck, Deku Bakugu asked, seeing Izuku's bareback and the intricate, alien, and glowing tattoo design all over his body, his left side that is. What? Izuku asked as he put on a shirt and then the UA gym jacket. You got tattoos? Bakugu asked. That glow. Didn't we talk about this? Izuku wondered. No. Everyone in the room snapped at the stunned greenate. Here was all Izuku muttered before shrugging his shoulders. I'll explain later. No, you will not. Girls' locker room. They are loud, Momo muttered to herself as she turned to Gyro as she fixed her ponytail. Wonder why they are so excitable, she asked. Probably saw Midoriya's glowing ink on his arm, Gyro reminded the rich girl. He looks so innocent, and then bam, tattoos on his arm. Glowing to boot, she said with a smirk. How do you even get tattoos to glow? Mina wondered out loud. There are compounds that can add bioluminescence, but they are known to be toxic if you put them under your skin, Momo reminded. Oh, Melissa suddenly butted in. They are not a tat sleeve, she stated simply. I beg your pardon, but what? Tsuyu deadpanned. Not a tat sleeve, Melissa repeated. They are all over the left side of his body, she stated. How do you know that? Okuko asked with a raised eyebrow. First, Melissa pointed to the tallest girl in the room. Get your mind out of the gutter. He copied the powers of a siren. Their trademark is that they have glowing tattoo-like markings all over the left side of their bodies, she added. Izuku's matches with the one known as Amora, beefy, beats you with ethereal arms and can harness partially powers from a former siren, Maya, she finalized. All over his left side. Gyro wondered. Yep, Melissa clarified. Also, on his left hand he has the mark of the outsider, another tattoo-like marking, easy to identify. Looks like if it was branded. From the inside out, she added. Fuck, that's metal, the punk girl muttered as she checked her shoes. Okay, enough delightedly around. We better go before Aizawa-sensei blows his top off. Yep, Mina agreed while moving around. He looks like my former math teacher. Miss the class by a second and you will spend a day crunching numbers, and your pencil on your teeth. Wonderful, Okuko said with a small smile. Our homeroom teacher is Oscar the Grouch, please. Melissa said as she opened the door. Oscar is friendlier and fluffier courtyard. Midnight shuddered in delight. Despite popular belief, she ain't no cradle robber. The fuck is people thinking? But the thought of nurturing the next generation was exciting. It was the only thing that she could think of, the only word she could think of that wasn't going to set her off, which was worse than one could imagine. Also, melancholy was her drive to ensure the new generation was ready, even more than they were before. The death of Oboro had such an effect on her that she became a taskmaster. She wanted the best of her students because she didn't want them to end up like Oboro and the people left behind mourning them. It was true this new batch of students was powerful, perhaps the strongest since UA's foundation, but power wasn't enough these days. Criminals were getting smarter, arming themselves with gear that, while subpar compared to hero gear, was enough to tip the balance in their favor. Most of the time it feels like I am fighting a JoJo villain for how complicated things become, she thought with some mirth as she saw both classes arrive, and her eyes instantly zeroed on Monoma. Monoma-kun, she called, stopping the blonde who seemed to try and taunt Midoriya, which was a mistake in on itself considering the last person who taunted him was Queen Bee and she ended up with both knees broken. I would greatly appreciate it if you focused your efforts of antagonizing Midoriya-kun on rather. Passing this evaluation, Midnight called sweetly. She idly noted how Mineta froze and sought refuge behind Asui. Smart kid. He recognized my tone. He understands, she thought as she sauntered to the front of the combined classes, seeing with glee how the males took a collective gulp of air. Still got it, Nemurai. With a smirk she looked at the assembled teens. Okay, I see you're all here. Good, she began. As your main homeroom teachers have told you already, today we test the limits of your quirks and work on improving them past their usual limits, Midnight began. Normal schools do not have a unified teaching method when it comes to quirks and the advantages they bring, so most of the time they tell you to do tasks without them, exercise and sports included, Midnight added. As you might guess, that doesn't fly well enough here in UA, HPH stated firmly. A hero's greatest weapon is his mind first, body second, and quirk third. That's because all three are allowed to grow and be nurtured, HPH reminded, which made sense for many. Back in their former schools, only quirkless exercises and sports were allowed to be had. It was worse for those with mutations. Tsuyu clearly remembers that she was banned from participating in the swimming team and any sport that required jumps because she was unable to control her jumps because her natural jump strength was enough to make her jump over a bus. Which is the height of irrationality, Eraserhead stated bored. That won't do. It won't do here, he added. This is UA, you do your best or you don't at all. Problem child. I really wish you would stop with that, Izuku mentioned as he stepped forward. Stop attracting problems and I will, Aizawa remarked dryly. Now, what was the longest throw you ever achieved at Aldera? 20 meters. I wasn't exactly in shape and I swear that baseball was heavier than the norm, Izuku answered. It was, Bakugu replied. Fuckers were testing us, remember Deku? Our class was a control group. Oh yeah. Malaka, Izuku hissed, not even blinking when Aizawa tossed a baseball to him with a black band tied around its length. You are going to stand in that circle, Aizawa pointed at a painted circle on the ground. And you're going to toss that ball as hard as you can. This time using your quirk, he said simply. And God help you if I don't see at least putting an effort into this. I should punch you for thinking that. You know how much effort I put into this. Izuku argued. I know what you're capable of. So move it, Aizawa by his part didn't look even perturbed that a student said he should punch him for assuming things. I can't believe this, Izuku muttered as he stood into the circle, and then narrowed his eyes. Okay fine, he growled as he suddenly transformed into his zoanthrope form. With a small snarl then he clenched his hand and brought it down, emitting a pink aura that coalesced into blue and red particles around him. Then he began to glow a rich purple as arc light arched around his body. I either break it or I pull a muscle, or my brain, he muttered as he tossed the ball in the air. Then he took a deep breath. TIID, he shouted, and their Class 1A and Class 1B experienced what could be generously described as time itself taking a break. Everything slowed down, everything, even Izuku, but that seemed to not be enough as he reared his feet, this one glowing a rich azure color. Then he lashed at the ball. The feet impacted the ball, a blast of blue energy enveloping the ball, but the ball seemed to take its time, just as he wanted because he reared his leg again, and he did it again. The second impact was as vicious as the first, and apparently on time as the effect of whatever Izuku shouted began to diminish, as time seemed to resume BOOMM. Some of the girls shrieked as the boys flinched as the ball was blasted away, the dry sound of air being forcefully blasted away and strangely enough heat emanating from where the ball had once been. Aizawa blinked once, then twice, then pulled a smartphone and looked at it, for a good time. Ding! The sound of the phone made every student look at Aizawa, who turned the screen so they could see it. 2.34 kilometers. As you can see, this is what happens when you bring yourselves to break your own limits. I will ensure you all give me your best until I think is the average, and I will demand better after that. There will be no more room for coddling. The students all looked at the underground hero with a small serious look on their faces. They were here to be heroes. The best was the minimum they were required. Plus ultra was the demanded goal. I see you all understand. Good, he said with a grin. Like I promised Bakugu-san, I am going to make you all cry blood 50-meter dash. Aidia took a starting run position alongside Tsuyu and the other two students from 1B, the girl with horns and a boy that was unremarkable looking like Izuku without his transformed form. With a small determined frown, Aidia prepared himself. This was it, his first step onward to becoming a hero and someone that could stand proud alongside the accomplishments of the Ingenium line. At the count of 3, Vlad King reminded, seeing how the machine in the side began to count towards the number. Then it did. Aidia was the first out, body being pushed onward by the sheer power of his quirk propulsion, small jets of focused flames being let out by the exhausts on his large calves and elbows. Aidia tenure. Original quirk, engine. Mutated quirk, dual engine. The mutation allowed Aidia to manifest engines on his elbows, eerily similar to that of his brother Tensai. In addition, the engines themselves seemed to have evolved, being able to produce double the force than they originally were able to. In addition, the fuel source for the combustion was slightly altered. Orange juice still works, but now it can be mixed with other juices like lemon juice to increase the output. In accordance with the mutation, Aidia's muscles, bones, and blood vessels became denser to ensure resistance to the sudden increase of force exerted on the body. Right behind Aidia was Tsuyu, using her powerful legs that allowed her to take huge strides and cover more distance in each one. Before, her legs would have protested. Her legs were designed to jump, not run, but now there was not such an option. She had to. She would too. Tsuyu Asui. Original quirk, frog. Mutated quirk, chimera frog. Tsuyu's mutated quirk gave her the abilities of not one, but several frogs in tandem. If it exists, chances are that Tsuyu quirk has it and manifested in her form. From powerful muscle legs to leap higher than before, tougher skin and strange multicolored scales on her cheeks, back of her hands, sheens and stomach that secrete a yet to identify but powerful neurotoxin to a tongue that is 10 times stronger than her original one and capable of injecting a very small dosage of the neurotoxin, are just some of the visible effects on her. As the quirk gave her the features and strengths of several frogs, it makes sense that her overall strength, durability, and agility are multiplied compared to her original form. As a side note, her reflexes are the best ever seen, and she has an understandable fear of stasis, due in part to her more animal-like traits. Behind Tsuyu, the blonde girl with horns trampled with surprising speed, keeping up with the mutated girl. It also helped she was on all fours and galloping like a horse. Pony Tsunotori. Quirk, horn cannon. Despite not being affected by the gas, Pony is an example of secondary mutations in the body carried by generations. Her quirk, horn cannon, has nothing to do with the fact her legs are horse-like or that her anatomy allows her to run on all fours at full speed when others cannot. Her spine and back are tough enough to carry an adult without issue, and her entire vascular system and her respiratory system are optimized for long operations or bursts of speed without compromising her health. On a related matter, it seems that quirk users with animal traits, like her and Tsuyu Asui, are incredibly susceptible to stasis mere presence. She also has a gun and a whip and knows how to hogtie a pig in 3 seconds flat. Behind Pony, Senkai Bara is making his best impression of a Tasmanian devil, the cartoon one. The bottom half of his body is an actual whirlwind of motion. Everything is spinning, giving the notion his lower half is a tornado and is leaving a gash on the ground as he moves. Before he could not. Now it was just a matter of concentration. Senkai Bara. Original quirk, gyrate. Mutated quirk, the spin. Sen's mutation is an interesting one. Before he could gyrate individual parts of his body, giving them the appearance of large drills. But try as he might, he could not gyrate his waist or torso like he wanted. This is due to the fact vital organs were there alongside non-gyrating bones like the spine. The spin changed that. He can rotate almost any part of his body, with the sole exception of his neck, but everything else he can do, even his skin, nails, and hair, creating some sort of defense against fists, as they would first have to go through a spinning force. This requires extreme concentration and training, as the rotation is far stronger than before, and can imbalance Sen off his feet. As a side note, he can now cosplay as the Tasmanian devil, as he always wanted. Ding, 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 ding. 4 rings sounded as the 4 teens passed the measuring bot on the other end of the line, with varying results. Tenya-san, 1.57 seconds. Asua-san, 2.44 seconds. Tsunotori-san, 3.55. Kaibara-san, 5.34 inch. Aizawa called, looking at the numbers with a small sigh. Not bad, but not good. Midoriya, Shield, Shinso, Kendo, You are next. Midoriya, no bunny form for this 1 inch, Izawa stated, seeing how the 4 students took positions. His handicapping you, Melissa said as she set her watch and the output of 1 for all at 4%. Also 4%, not going to blow my legs while I still need them, insinuating you won't need them at one point, Izuku said as he felt the void pool around the mark of the outsider. Of course, I am going to replace them with rockets, she teased with a smirk. Ready. I have been ready for this since I was 4. Kendo and Shinso both glanced at one another, wondering the hell kind of relationship these two had. Ultimately Shinso scoffed. Pretentious flashy quirk users. Then the buzzer started. Izuku was the first to react, his body becoming dark mist and taking the form of something, as if the shadows were alive and dashed on all 4, making a licker look slow. Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, hacks. A rare happenstance of quirk mutations dating back to his original ancestors on both sides of the family. Izuku was born with a unique quirk that allowed him to take powers from video game characters and use them for his own use as long as several rules are followed during acquisition. One of the most interesting aspects of hacks is the mutation of his body to accept such powers. Each one modifies him to the molecular level, granting him control of energies that were theory before he got them, augmentation of his very DNA and control of his own cells, and even manifestation of transformations that violate several laws of thermodynamics. As a small note, these energies' existence is now known as the Midoriya conundrum, as they can only be realistically studied while he manifests them. They are real, but there is no way to study them without him around, for the moment. Melissa was neck to neck with Izuku, her form enveloped in a blue-like mist that trailed behind her as she propelled herself with powerful strides. A grin formed on her lips as she began to bypass Izuku little by little. This was 4% while moving. 1 for all was a monster of a quirk. Melissa shield. Quirk, energy hoarder. 1 for all. An accident that should have killed her instead helped Melissa manifest her quirk, with the help of Nanomachine's son. Energy hoarder is a stockpile quirk that has been hoarding energy from Melissa, either being kinetic via movement of anything, honestly, thermal energy that a human naturally has, and chemical, which are the chemical reactions within the body, and multiplies the hoarded energy by a factor of 9. However, due to the time it took her quirk to manifest, she has shoddy control over it. So she uses a custom-made S-Watch and the nanomachines within her, called Siva, to control the energy output of Energy Hoarder and distribute it all over the body until she can learn how to do so without the watch. A small addendum, Siva granted her passive abilities. Chief among them are accelerated healing, hardening of epidermis on traumatic contact, semi-symbiotic interaction with machines, and an onboard medic unit that monitors her vitals with pinpoint accuracy. Dear God, they are monsters, Kendo thought as she enlarged her legs and took massive strides to cover more distance and shorten the time. But try as she might, each step she took was small compared to how much terrain those two covered. But like hell I am giving up. With narrowed eyes she actually took a huge dive, large hands hitting the ground and arms enlarging as steam came out with small cracks of what could be assumed to be thunders. Then she propelled herself onward, passing Izuku and Melissa by inches. Itsuka Kendo. Original quirk, Big Fist. Mutated quirk, Big Body. The mutation on Itsuka took an interesting turn as it allowed Itsuka to gigantify her body to the size of a 3-story house or to increase the mass and size of any of her body parts, head included. Her gigantification is sudden and violent, steam and what is assumed to be lighting being a byproduct of the sudden transformation. The steam generated is hot enough to cause discomfort, and the lighting apparently can power a small bulb or slightly stun someone. As an added note, her skin is somewhat tougher, akin to actual leather or scales in terms of resistance to blunt force trauma or cuts, yet retains malleability and elasticity that is befitting normal human skin. Also is soft, like cotton. Shinso looked at the 3 classmates in front of him. He knew about the dumbass that had gone first during the entrance exams. It was nice to put a name to the faces of Dumbass 1 and Dumbass 2. What irked him was not the fact that he was going to be last or the fact that Midoriya could turn, aside from a jacked-up rabbit that could pose as Mako's family, into what he generously described as all his fucking nightmares on 4 legs. Or that shield girl, he knows he heard that name before, aside from being pretty also had a powerful quirk, or that Kendo finally found clothes that could hold her transformation and was now gaining on the living nightmare and the girl with the powerful quirk. No. What irked and angered him was that he didn't do his stretches. Hitoshi Shinso. Quirk, Brainwash. Shinso is one of the non-mutated in the current hero course, and his quirk reflects this, seemingly unamusing and with both strength and weaknesses befitting non-mutated quirks. Shinso's Brainwash is not less powerful, just situational. Brainwash activates whenever someone answers Shinso verbally and he has previously started a conversation or a sentence. These initial words carry a mimetic virus that activates the moment a person answers back and Shinso wills it. This results in complete control of the limbic system, emotions stunning the target, initiating a takeover of the motor system, and ensuring only Shinso can exert control. However, it doesn't deaden the nervous system, so the pain of any kind can break control. Also, because of the negative cognition behind mind control of any kind, there is no clear data regarding how many people Shinso can brainwash or if there is a backlash, as it is to be known, of Shinso if he brainwashes too many people. Also, he is really out of shape and lives out of spite. The finishing dings sounded almost at the same time. Well, 3 out of 4. Shinso came last, slightly limping and panting for air. 2.01 for Kendo. 2.03 for Shield. 2.04 for Midoriya and 10.34 for Shinso. You need to start getting in shape, Midnight commented as she stared at the purple-haired boy limp towards his class. Also warm up. No, for real warm up, kids, she said out loud, seeing how Izuku turned back into human form and approached Shinso. Hey, you okay? Izuku asked, seeing how Shinso didn't answer, but just limped away made Izuku ask again. I can heal you. Don't need to ask or anything. We are classmates after all. I don't need help, especially from you and your special quirk, Shinso said. But that will cripple you in the other tests. Cramps don't go just like that. At least let me do this, Izuku argued, hands slightly glowing blue and green. I said fuck off, Shinso said angrily as he limped away. Izuku simply frowned, pulling a single marble from his armature and instantly overcharging it with solar light until it glowed white, then held it in hand and tossed it to the retreating Shinso, who stiffened then relaxed as he glowed. You're welcome, Izuku said as he passed him. Stubborn jackass. You guys got a healer? Setsuna Tokuj asked. Mina just grinned smugly. We got a goddamned paladin grip strength test. Soto slightly glanced at the manacle that he held in his hand. The thing looked fragile, at first sight. But the fact it was enduring the combined grip of Izuku's and the other 3 spectral hands mean that thing could take a beating and was surely made while thinking of their augmented strength. So he took a cue from Izuku and used his quirk. Rikido Soto. Original quirk, Sugar Rush. Mutated quirk, Sugar Blast. Soto's original quirk relied heavily on the consumption of sugar to trigger a metabolic reaction that increased his body strength depending on the amount of sugar ingested while sacrificing cognitive ability. Sugar Blast literally changed the rules, as it takes any glucose-rich food or lacking that glucose from the body to trigger an even stronger effect than before. Strangely, the side effects of the original quirk remain, but lessened significantly. He would have to go over the dose that would basically make him stupid for him to start feeling them. This also means he actually is diabetes immune, for some reason. Also, his pecs have pecs. At the side of Soto, one Mizo Shuji had his own grip on the manacle. His hand had grown bigger. Muscles that weren't supposed to be there had grown and increased the strength of his grip exponentially. To the point, he was sure he was about to crack. Crack! He looked at his broken manacle, then at the other one, held by one Melissa, who looked somewhat sheepish at breaking hers. Mizo Shuji. Original quirk, Dupliarms. Mutated quirk, Duplisystem. Mizo's original quirk was already weird, being an example of stacked mutations within someone, granting him abilities aside from his ill-named original quirk. Duplisystem is leagues above the original quirk. Aside from increasing the speed at which he can grow limbs and other body parts, the real work went internal. He can actually grow extra muscle, skin, veins, and bones, literally reinforcing his limbs for attacks or defense. And it's not just on his arms, he can do this in every part of his body. As a result, his caloric intake is on the roof. Also, he's the only person that is known that can break someone's knuckles with teeth that are reinforced to be as tough as diamonds. Oops, Melissa said with an embarrassed smile. They should have gone for the Goliath model, far sturdier. You're the expert, Mizo said, having learned in their impromptu class session about costumes and materials, and slightly wincing when he saw Aizawa-sensei narrowing his eyes at them. Oh, stop being a grouch, Vlad King muttered. Hajime has been wanting to upgrade them for a while. Now he has an excuse, the blood hero stated as he looked at 2 of his students, and a grin slightly formed on his lips. The first one Tetsu, who the fuck named him like that, has his own manacle gripped between his right hand, this one bigger than the norm and surrounded in shiny metal ore while his teeth seemed to grow bigger. Tetsu. Original quirk, Steel. Mutated quirk, Steel Shark. Tetsu's quirk took an interesting mutation upon being exposed to the gas. Both he and Ahiro Kirishima share animalistic traits, unusual sharp teeth, that were inherited from their own ancestors. In Tetsu's case, his ancestors had at one point quirks with shark-like mutations. This affected his quirk and him to a degree. His steel quirk gained an extra layer of defense in the form of dermal denticles, or shark-like skin, reducing drag when in movement and making it really hard and dangerous to try and grapple him. In addition, when he activates his quirk fully, he turns into a humanoid like a shark, doubling his size and strength, and gaining other shark-like traits like electroreception, being able to sense the electromagnetic field of everything alive, but doesn't possess a lateral line or can shed his teeth like normal sharks. Also, because he's made of steel upon transformation, he can't swim. Vlad then turned his sight to another student. She should have been part of the recommendation students, but due to the lack of students and the fuck-up of the Department of Education, she alongside Shoto Todoroki, Momo Yaroyorozu, and Juzo Honanuki had to take the exams like everyone else. She might not look like it, being a girl that seemed to party and flirt in the same manner a shark hunts and moves, with efficiency, but Setsuna Tokage is quite a brainiac. Setsuna Tokage. Original quirk, lizard tail splitter. Mutated quirk, lizard shift. In a strange mutation, Setsuna's ability to split her limbs apart and control them was enhanced with a sudden mutation from her grandparents' actual lizard DNA shift. Anytime she wants, she can shift any limb of her body into that or any lizard, even extinct ones, as long as two rules are followed. The first and foremost is that she knows what kind of lizard she's planning to use, and the second is that, at the moment, she can do it to just two parts of her body. So don't be freaked out when suddenly the snout of a T-Rex flies at you at terminal velocity. That's just Setsuna's mouth trying to take a chomp of you. Clever girl. He was half tempted to tell Setsuna that using her tail for the test wasn't allowed, but considering that Uraraka had created a gravity well on the damned thing and had crushed it so badly that Aizawa had put yes on her results meant that as long a quirk was being used it didn't matter much. Still, he had to ensure his kids were fit. Not all problems can be fixed with quirks. The issues of a hammer for all problems can crop up that can be bad. Today they would learn their quirk's limits. Tomorrow they would work their bodies to the bone. Standing long jump. Yuga Aiyama watched the sandbox with something akin to contempt. He has never liked this kind of event before, one because he lacked the jumping strength on his legs to ever clear the sandbox. He once tried it with his original quirk. It hurt, a lot, but he cleared it. Now, however, things were different. He was different. The machine at his side dinged, indicating a go, and he took a running start before jumping away, fists aimed at the ground. Then his knuckles fired a beam of glittering energy that launched him farther than he ever had jumped before. For once he felt free. Yuga Aiyama. Original quirk, naval laser. Mutated quirk, faisceau de paillettes, glitter beam. Aiyama's original quirk was incredibly self-destructive, so much so that a special belt had to be made to prevent his quirk, naval laser, from leaking out and ensuring focusing power instead of an uneven force that could have collapsed not his stomach, but his entire lower half. It showed an example of a quirk far too powerful for the body to even handle. This changed after the mutation. Strangely, the change was more on the body than the quirk itself. The body adapted several outlets in the form of glittering like crystals made out of what appears an offshoot of Lonsdaleite, 5 on the knuckles of the hands, on the belly button, and the tip of the toes. This allows the quirk to be fired from these crystals with varying degrees of strength without compromising the body's general health like before. However, the laser itself hasn't changed. Unlike his peers, Aiyama's quirk hasn't changed at all, only the means to fire it. This shows that the gas's original goal was to improve flaws within the target's body and quirk, which happened to Aiyama as his body was not prepared for his original quirk. How curious. Clearing the sandbox was satisfying, clearly so, but Aiyama had to move away, fast because the one behind him wasn't keen on waiting. Move, you little shit. Katsuki Bakugo screamed while running barefoot, and the cuffs of his gym uniform lifted well past above his knees. Boom. Then they exploded and lifted him into the air while he cackled like a maniac. Katsuki Bakugo. Original quirk, explosion. Mutated quirk, nitrox. Katsuki Bakugo would be a classic example of quirk marriages, had that been the objective all along, but his parents' quirks simply meshed well enough that his original quirk, explosion, was just a natural byproduct of a happy marriage. That changed with the gas exposure. Originally he sweated nitroglycerine, and a special organ embedded in the palms of his hands acted as a flint that helped with the chemical reaction, aka explosion. Now, however, the gland has nitrous oxide, which permits him to fire his explosions and pretty much enlarge the duration of the explosion or the flame generated thanks in part to the number's chemical properties. Also, he grew the same glands on the soles of his feet, the back of his calves, and his face. For some reason, this gives him unprecedented agility and maneuverability he didn't have before, alongside means of defense if he ever had his hands and legs bound. Then there are his horns. Currently, no one knows why they are there, surely as means of defense. Strangely, he also has a strange reaction to sudden electric jolts. As in an aggressive reaction, a very aggressive one, as they had nervous ends that react to a sustained jolt. Bakugo cleared the sandbox with ease and even went past the landing zone just because he could, all while displaying a cocky smile on his lips. "I see," Monoma Nito exclaimed in a dramatic fashion, pointing at the general direction of Class 1A. "To think that the powerhouses were placed in a single class. How droll. Can I punch him?" Melissa asked in general. "But don't think just because you have powerful quirks makes you capable of standing to us, Class 1B. I will show you this," he said as he pointed 2 fingers at his forehead, like mimicking a gun, and then he let the thumb drop, like the hammer of one. Ghost Opera. Behind Monoma a figure coalesced into existence. It was as tall as All Might, but not as beefy, mechanical-like. A red coat and pants covered the mechanical-like parts while metallic boots covered the feet. The hands were exposed, showing 3 orbs like protrusions on the palms. A red cape moved behind it and was tied to the neck in what appeared to be with a red scarf, all while the mechanical face had half of it covered by a mask that had several holes in it, with 2 small orbs that glowed embedded into it. Also, it was posing as if it was part of the Bohemian Rhapsody cover. Nito Monoma. Original quirk, copy. Mutated quirk, Phantom Soul. Nito was among the mutated with the highest chance of dying after exposure to the gas, thanks in part to his original quirk, copy. It was found that quirks that depended on others or allowed stockpiling of any kind didn't get along with the gas. Nito somehow, by sheer grit, and according to him stubbornness, not only survived, but his quirk mutated into a different beast altogether. Phantom Soul, on the outside, is an upgrade to his original quirk, copy, increasing his original time limit to 15 minutes as a base and increasing his allotted quirk copies to 6 instead of 3, all while being able to use them at the same time. That is if you ignore the under-the-hood upgrade, a stand persona Nito calls Ghost Opera. This entity, while being visible is intangible, unless it's attacking you and you attack it back, can copy quirks, or a semblance of it. Ghost Opera does not copy quirks per se, but rather traits that increase its ability to fight. Monoma admitted he had Ghost Opera copy Itsuka Kendo's quirk, hoping to have Ghost Opera punch with large fists, only for Ghost Opera to gain increased punching length. Then he had it copy Mizo's quirk, to have more arms to punch, only for Ghost Opera to punch faster, way too faster. The stand-our persona appears whenever Monoma mimics a gun going off to his head. It obeys his orders without hesitation and can be damaged while attacking others, which Nito will feel the attacks and damage done to him, but reduced. Also, he started JoJo posing, just because. Ghost Opera, Monoma said, ignoring how Izuku and Melissa were just seconds from exploding for seeing an actual stand. "Launch me over the sandbox," the stand-our persona nodded, grabbed Monoma by the scruff of the jacket. "Hey, not this way," and tossed him like a sack of potatoes. The shrill scream Monoma made while he flew over the sandbox and cleared it made everyone laugh, all but Eraserhead, who just rolled his eyes and marked something on his smartphone, then sighed. Next, Monoma clearly needed better control techniques, or to be more precise with his orders. Repeated sidesteps. "I regret everything." Mineta all but screamed as he bounced on 2 clumps of his bouncy hairballs that permitted him to obliterate the previous record for sidestepping the school had. Issue here. Now he didn't know how to stop. Minoru Mineta. Original quirk, Pop-Off. Mutated quirk, Gunk-Off. And the award for upgraded quirk but looks, acts, and feels the same go to Minoru Mineta. His original quirk, Pop-Off, permitted him to remove sticky hairballs from his hair and toss them, and anyone who touched them would be stuck due to how sticky the balls were, having to wait 5 hours in a day if Mineta is in good health. This hasn't changed with his new quirk, Gunk-Off. From his head 2 more rows of hairballs grew, flanking the original ball row. These secondary balls are in fact hollow, encasing a powerful gunk agent that when released act as a melted version of Pop-Off, ensuring anything caught in it gets caught and immobilized. Even worse is the fact Mineta has full control of the second balls, and when they deploy the gunk, creating devastating traps that can immobilize even the strongest opponents that would need to tear their own skin to remove the gunk or the balls that get stuck on them. However, this seems to be the only advantage the gas gave Mineta, as his body didn't show any changes aside from a better uptake of nutrients, which might explain his short size, his quirk vampire any chances he had to grow taller. Why do I have to listen to Monoma? On the other end, Kojiro Bondo was doing a copy of Mineta, only with 2 clumps of what seemed to be glue that bounced him at a slower speed than Mineta due to his size. Didn't make the experience better, just worse. Hey, my idea was brilliant, Monoma exclaimed. So you screaming like a banshee on fire after your stand tossed you like a sack of potatoes, was it? Suka said with a smirk. Kojiro Bonto. Original quirk, Semidine. Mutated quirk, Cementite. In a strange twist, Kojiro's quirk mutation didn't affect him in the same way it did others. It affected his quirk directly. Before he was able to fire Semidine, a powerful glue-like adhesive that he could fire from holes on his head and could time it to last for hours or just seconds, depending on the situation. It changed with Cementine. Aside from being able to fire double the dose of a new glue that dries on command, but also has the properties of cement, glue, or rubber depending on his commands, which are all mental. This also seemed to affect his skin to some degree, as his skin is slightly rubbery, but just enough. For some reason nothing else changed, not even his diet, marking him as the teenager with fewer mutations visible on his body or quirk thanks to the gas. By now everyone was sure the two had taken the previous record in sidesteps and killed it dead. Now the question was how to stop them without hurting because of momentum. Sigh, problem child. Stasis, Aizawa said. Ah, you sure? Izuku asked. Is the only thing you have that kills momentum dead on its tracks, the Erasure hero reminded. His right, you know, Melissa said, taking some steps back. Izuku muttered something, holding a marble in each hand. Then he infused them with stasis energy, each one now glowing a pale blue. The fuck Setsuna took several steps back, a strange feeling overcoming her. Glancing to her right, she noted that nearly everyone with animal mutations had taken several steps back and looked as if death had warmed over. Without a second thought, Izuku tossed the marbles at Mineta and Kojiro, or better said the ground. A dome of what seemed to be a localized snowfall formed around them, and actually began to slow them down crack. Then both froze, a strange substance that seemed like ice forming on their bodies. Izuku didn't pay this mind and went for them, pulling them out of the dome and placing them away. With 2 pads on their frozen shoulders, the ice fell like a lizard shedding skin, and both boys blinked and moved about a second later. I think I saw the end, Mineta muttered to himself. You too? Kojiro asked. The hell was that? Setsuna asked Mina, who for once didn't look like grinning. She looked excessively serious. The end was all she said as she shook herself and walked towards the next exercise. How? Dramatic ball throw. Okako stood inside the circle, the ball floating above the palm of her hand. So far no one has been able to break Izuku's record throw or kick. Bakugo tried hard, but only reached a meager 1.55 kilometers. She aimed to break the record, for she had something only Izuku had but could barely use in its totality. Gravity. Okako Uraraka. Original quirk, 0 gravity. Mutated quirk, gravity control. The gas had unknown effects on quirks. All experts agree that the gas was aimed at the improvement of quirks via brute force and dragging the body along the way. Okako's original quirk, 0 gravity, dealt with a powerful force already, the harness of several theories, so it stands to reason that when her quirk got affected by the gas, so did her body. Standing at over 200 centimeters of height, it is believed this happened because her quirk demanded it. Gravity, after all, has a better effect on smaller objects when it manifests on larger objects. In her case, 0 gravity became gravity control. Touching things with her right hand does when she was able to before take the gravitational influence of any objects and permit it to float, while her left increases the influence of gravity on so said object, making it heavier. However, when she touches herself with both hands, she gains full control of her gravity, able to exert the powerful force around her, float, literary force, someone, to the ground or lift them with a simple glance. Scary, isn't it? With a mental command, the ball touched her hand. The moment it did, she reared her arm back and threw it with all she had. The ball first went straight, then up, and up, and up. The 2 classes looked upwards and cranked their necks more as the ball vanished from sight. Aizawa heard Nemurai and Khan actually laugh while HPH chuckled at him, especially when he looked at the distance the ball was making, already shattering Midoriya's record by the sheer impossibility of the numbers in front of him. With a sigh, he displayed the mark Okako had. Congratulations, not even All Might lost us a ball on his first day and you somehow made it fly past the atmosphere, he said, showing the infinity sign on the phone. You are now just flexing, Izuku muttered to Okako, who stuck her tongue at him with a smile. Do you believe in gravity? I do. I don't believe Pluto will become a planet again. I hate you, she said with no bite in her words as they saw Momo make her way to the circle and undo her jacket, making every single one be male blush at the fact she was openly exposing to, and her stomach then began to shine. Momo Yaroyorozu. Original quirk, creation. Mutated quirk, creation. Despite the fact she didn't change the name of her quirk, she and the quirk in question did change, a lot. Before she needed a steady supply of lipids and body fat to initiate a molecular transformation in her skin that caused the creation of objects as long as she knew their molecular makeup and what she wanted to create in the first place. While she still requires lipids and knowledge for that to occur, the process is greatly accelerated. As a result, she requires more fuel for this to occur. Her body is now able to store more body fat in a far more efficient way, with triple reserves than she was able to have and create faster than ever before, complementing her already bright mind and memory. The only two flaws encountered are that creation now heats the area where the creation comes from, but she is able to use this heat to cook her muscles and pretty much stretch them and prepare for long periods of activity. The second is an increase of weight and density, especially in the bones and muscles, as now they have to hold a greater mass and a far evolved vascular and respiratory system to keep up with the higher demands on blood, oxygen, and nutrients the body would inevitably demand on high-level activities, like fights. For some strange reason, unlike Okako, she didn't grow to be an Amazonian beauty, but she's still beautiful and has permits to carry and use guns, of any type. What she produced from her stomach was a rocket launcher, or to be more precise, a javelin, one that she had modified for her special purposes. Setting on the ground, she pulled the rocket and put the ball on the hollow tip, then loaded it up, and hefted the large contraption to her shoulder. Fire in the hole, she called. Backblast. To her sides, Bakugu called. Everyone immediately moved to her sides, knowing that getting his by the blast of a rocket was as bad as the rocket itself. Sure enough, the pressurized blast from firing a rocket kicked dirt behind Momo as the 11.8 kilograms rocket flew away. With the ball as the tip of it, it flew without care, reaching its optimum operational length of over 4.000 meters, yet everyone noted how Momo didn't let the javelin go yet. They did note she pressed a button, and immediately the rocket fizzled out of life and went in a downward fall, but still making distance until it landed with a crash somewhere in the vicinities of the academy grounds. 4.05 kilometer, Shota said with a bored tone, but one with an edge of maniac distress. This was the class he had to deal with, and the fact Izuku was the normal one, the kid with the paracausal forces and the shouts that can tear your soul, wasn't helping a lot in his sanity. Then stepped Mina, the ball on her tail, a grin on her face, and a strange sense of deadliness in her. Mina Eshido. Original quirk, acid. Mutated quirk, xenoacid. Mina's lineage can be considered bizarre in the most generous of cases. Before the mutation, her skin was a byproduct of her original quirk, acid, but nothing could explain the pink hair, the black sclera on her eyes, or the horns, apparently all vestiges of her ancestors' quirks previous to acid. Then came the gas, everything changed, and everything made sense, kinda. Mina's original quirk became more acidic, to the point of being able to melt to the molecular level in the matter of seconds and have being able to time when the acid begins melting, a unique improvement over the original acid that acted immediately. Also, she can dilute it to the point of being so slippery that can be used to douse fires, be used for mobility or for break grapples. The real mutation happened while manifesting the vestiges of her ancestors' own quirks. The black sclera were the smallest manifestation of what was in fact the barbed tail and exoskeleton-like protrusions that now cover her shins, the length of her spine and her ribs, and toughened her own skin to her acid. The horns are in fact an internal mutation. Her joints are now incredibly flexible, allowing her to move them at extreme angles, and her muscles and nervous system compensate by giving her no perfect control over them, thus giving her a small degree of enhanced strength. She still knocks things with her tail. So, I have to launch this while on the circle, right? She asked Aizawa. Yes, get on with it already, he said with a bored tone. Okay then she stepped out of the circle, taking some distance, then began to move her body about, the ball still held by her tail. Then she broke into a sprint that soon became cartwheels and somersaults, each one cresting alongside her tail that acted as a counterweight and dragging her body by sheer inertia alone, flipping in the air like a deranged pink blob, until she reached the circle. One last somersault and she launched the ball with all she had, her tail adding to the already accumulated inertia and potential energy generated by her spinning. The ball flew far, flew fast, and flew hard. Izuku looked at the indicator, slightly groaning in his mind. A kilometer, on the dot. Next, he said, ignoring the cheer of Mina as she high-fived the next one, Toru. Toru Hagakure. Original quirk, invisibility. Mutated quirk, prismatic generator. Toru's original quirk was the end goal of all invisible users, being able to be unseen without giving away their locations by the refraction of light alone or movement. She was the perfect ghost, when she's naked, which opened a whole can of worms that no one wanted to touch. The gas changed that. Now she is a living solar panel, only in Japan. Her skin adapted the ability to absorb any kind of light around her, mostly solar, that makes her visible. But do not be fooled, this is just a representation of what she has stored. The more light she stores, the stronger she becomes, but she has a limit on how much she can store. No one knows which is. A byproduct of this is her hair, which according to DNA tests before the mutation was mint-colored, now is a kaleidoscope of colors that indicates when she has enough light in her to become visible or has spent enough to become invisible again. And yes, she can become invisible again and possibly refract light around her to turn it into a laser or use the same light she has stored to do the same. Of all the students in the hero course, her quirk is the one with more mysteries and potential to uncover. Toru gripped the ball in her hands, hard. The fabric and the device tied to it groaned under her grip. She could feel it, the light that gathered under her skin, feeding her muscles, feeding her organs, feeding her soul. Is this what Midoriya-san feels whenever he uses his light? She thought with a small frown on her face. She had gotten close enough, once, to feel his light when he was using it before this. The feeling it gave was intoxicating. Simply said, it was power, pure and simple. A small taste her skin had was enough to fuel her today. And she wasn't even ready for the full force. She wasn't stupid. She knew she had a limit. The more her hair shone, the more she knew how close she was to her limit. So today she decided to leave it all out. Taking a pitching stance, Toru rose leg high, making Ojiro gulp. The energy stored in her body burned with anticipation. Then she tossed. Boom. Jesus and Mary, she heard Melissa scream. Don't use the name of the Lord and the Holy Mother in vain. Toru didn't pay any mind to that, or the result, or the fact the ball left her hands in a rainbow that broke the sound barrier. No, she looked at her now invisible hand, at her invisible arm, at her invisible self. It would take time for her to gather energy once more and become visible. It didn't bother her at all. She was used to not seeing her hands in a long time. Long run. Momo was glad she made a motorized scooter to deal with the long run test, because it was a test of stamina and pacing. Because there was no way anyone would be able to outperform Midoriya's stamina. He was simply a monster in that regard. He had admitted it himself. In his bunny form, he could be outrun by a cheetah going at full tilt, as long he started to run the moment the cheetah charged at him. However, in terms of outlasting, he would outperform a cheetah or any other animal or living being. But right now she was starting to wonder if the gas had similar effects on the others. Like Kyoka, that was actually running on all fours. Kyoka Gyro. Original quirk, earphone jack. Mutated quirk, cat jack. Kyoka blames her father for the mutation she gained, for no one on her mother's side had this, ever. Her hearing was already improved thanks to her original quirk, and had a mastery over her earlobe-like jacks, that changed when cat-like mutations were introduced to her body. She gained several mannerisms of cats, or to be more precise, every single feline in the animal kingdom. Increased agility, the ability to see in the dark, sharper hearing, nails that can grow into claws and are sharp enough to cut into the flesh with ease and hard enough to not be broken so easily, predatory instincts, always being able to land on her feet in perfect control of her center of gravity while lacking a tail to add for a balancing force. All this with the only visible mutation being tufts of hair on the top of her ears in the shape of cat ears. The only backdraw that can be summarized of her now feline improvements is that she is way too fixated on tackling Denki Kaminari and toying with him, for whatever reason. We blame his ears for it. Momo had to bit a giggle, while Midoriya was in the lead. The second was for Denki, that was running away from Gyro as if his life depended on it. Considering that Gyro had basically zeroed on him the moment the long run began, she honestly couldn't blame him. Denki Kaminari. Original quirk, electrification. Mutated quirk, static mouse. In a beneficial twist, Denki suffered perhaps the best of the mutation in terms of improvements. His original quirk, electrification, was powerful, but the side effect was that he could not go beyond his wattage limit unless he wanted to fry his brain and basically dumb himself out of combat, which is a great concern considering that the brain is a fine-tuned electrical computer. The gas mutated Denki's body to permit him to discharge his electric current without frying his brain. It came with the slight caveat of becoming a living lawsuit, if Nintendo still held the Pokémon IP rights. He grew Pikachu-like ears at the top of his head, a tail, and his cheeks now spot 2 red circles. These changes are not to show only. The ears are in fact not ears. They are in fact 2 means to discharge accumulated electricity that would otherwise harm Denki and fry his brain during discharge. The tail helps him ground himself whenever he uses his electricity and even catch stray electric attacks whenever possible, and the circles on his cheeks are in fact 2 electric-like pouches that store extra electricity in case he begins to run out of his own. He also became incredibly fast, but only when running away from Kyoka. Behind Momo, Ojiro kept his pace steady alongside Pony, the only member of 1B who had endured the punishing pace of the long run and had so far been able to keep up with Izuku's insane stamina. Both looked at one another, then at the running Denki and the grinning Kyoka, who was just hairs away of catching him. Or was she toying with him? Because every time it seemed she had him, she would just stay behind for some time and let Denki pick up speed just for her to do it again, and again and again. Both then sighed. Hopefully having been this long in the run would net them better scores. Later, Aizawa looked at the results displayed on his smartphone. In all honesty, he expected far more outrageous results with Wounded along the way because these were new quirks wielded by teenagers with the control of a 5-year-old. The fact they weren't wounded indicated that at one point they might have trained their quirks or they received slight counsel on how they might be operating. This was far more visible with 1A, which had Midoriya written all over it. Class 1B were good with their new quirks, but their mutations, unlike 1As, were more akin to improvements that could be done compared to 1As overall overhaul in how their original quirks operated. Overall, this could be the strongest class of students UA would ever see for some time, provided they didn't kill each other. Accidents happen, and with quirks, this powerful anything can happen. It wasn't a secret that the strongest quirk users were assigned to him because he was the only one that could diffuse their quirks with a glance, Midoriya being the only exception because his light was fucking bullshit. Displaying the results to the students, some got happy that they had ranked this high, surely expecting that their new quirks and the lack of training would hinder them compared to their original quirks. Okay, you hellions, Aizawa began, stowing the smartphone away. By this point the assembly must be over. There was an outcry about that. He could vaguely hear Mineta said not again, while Midoriya and Monoma were clutching their heads in shock. I consider them illogical and a waste of time, he added. Maybe you. But last time I missed one. I missed 3 excursions, 2 meetings for a cat cafe, and a seminar on what to do in generalized villain attacks. Mineta cried in shock. Last time I missed one. I found out that a hero had visited it. Monoma cried. And he was my favorite. Okay, fine. Midnight, Aizawa said, looking done with life in general. On the sidelines the R-rated heroine let out a huff of annoyance, something you wouldn't expect of such an enticing person like her. I swear, she said, clapping her hands to get the attention of the teens. Okay, listen up. Because Aizawa decided to be a lazy bum, it falls to me to educate you all on what you might have missed in the assembly, she began. First off, classes. From Monday to Friday you have from 8:20 to 8:35 am short homeroom with your homeroom teacher to harp you with how you messed the day before. That's more for 1A than 1B because Aizawa is a lazy perfectionist. Nemurai, kindly, fuck you. The gathered students didn't know how to react to that dynamic, so they stayed quiet. After that up to 12:30 you have 4 periods of normal classes because you still need to know how 2 + 2 = 4 and not 22, then lunch, and after that 3 periods of pure heroic nonsense, Midnight said with a smirk. Saturday you also have classes, but only to noon, full heroic training from 8:35 to 12:30, both classes together. After that you have the rest of the week for yourselves. This is a new one for us, as Saturday was free, not anymore, Nemurai sighed. Because of the increased kidnappings and a possible troop attack, UA has limited exits outside its facilities only on Sunday and only to the shops and amenities around the school. Yes, I know this sucks ass, but we cannot push our luck, she let the implied words, because we lost too many people. We don't want to lose you out of the conversation. But they were there. Once you return to your classrooms, your syllabus will be on your desks, detailing how the classes will go, the general map of UA, and the installations around UA you can visit during Sundays. Alongside rules, you have to follow a chronogram of when the exams will take place if all goes well, meaning Vlad King stepped in. That any eventuality can change that chronogram. Be aware, he added. Also, Hound Dog, our counselor has opened his offices for everyone who still has issues regarding the past months, he said. Might want to use them, Izuku thought with a small bitter tone in his mind. Just because he became the nightmare of the troop didn't mean he didn't have nightmares of his own. Beyond that, you have the day for yourselves, loiter around, prepare yourselves. Tomorrow the Real deal begins, Eraserhead said as he began to walk away. As charming as a missile to the face, Melissa muttered to Izuku, seeing how the other teachers just shook their heads and gave the teens slight encouraging smiles as they also walked away. Don't hold it against him. He's an underground hero that has to keep tabs of 21 students and resist the urge to dig a hole and sleep eternally, Izuku said as he saw how the classes began to disperse, especially with Monoma all but acting like freaking DIO and touting that 1A. Had won this time, but things would be different next time. I feel he's missing a mustache and he would have the cheesy villain look down to pot, Melissa said as she lightly slapped Izuku on the chest. Come on, wanna get out of this and download something on your console. Why my console? Look at me in the eyes and tell me that someone would argue about having access to the iChannels, she said. Okay, point. Just know that if you end up bricking my console, you're dead, Izuku announced. I'm downloading the channels, not Cyberpunk 2077, to the PS4. 30 minutes later. Returning to the dorms had been a experience, overall. For Izuku it still felt surreal. He was in UA, the best school for heroics. His first day ended up being okay and no one bullied him. Who would when you can toss sons at bullies? But there was a lot of teasing, mostly from Mina, who apparently needed to tease as humans needed to breathe. It also helped that he wasn't a nervous wreck as he was before. Everything helped that his classmates are people he could trust and were not quirkish jerks or manipulated to be one in some sort of sick experiment by the troop. It was more surreal considering that, back in Aldera he was mocked for having noodle for arms. Didn't help that this came of Tsubasa, the guy who was somehow defied the laws of aerodynamics by flying with flimsy wings and a beer belly. Now, well, he somehow intimidated his classmates with his siren tattoos alone. Who knew glowing tattoos were intimidating? Not him, that's for certain. After changing into something more comfortable, cargo shorts and a shirt that said t-shirt, he was back in the common room with Melissa, who was downloading the app for the channels. Are you sure this will work? He asked the blonde girl. Of course, relax, I'm not going to brick your console, Melissa assured. This is downloaded from the main servers of I-Island Entertainment Sector. It has been triple-checked for Trojans and malicious malware. It is updated every month, she assured. I mean, can you really download anything with UA's firewalls up and going? He clarified. Yeah, look, you have to basically triple-click safeties in order the firewalls don't tear any program apart and let them pass. Once they do is easy sailing. Trust me, she added, seeing Okako sit nearby, a glass of water in hand, or rather floating. I think he means it will download with usual speed. Or we will have to wait an hour, she stated, because there is astronomy program I have heard that I want to watch. Oh, you mean Mysteries of the Gestalt? Oh, you're going to love it, Melissa assured. Then again, it will have something for everyone, and since it will be on different timetables, we get to record it to see it later. Please remember that 6 to 7 in the night is my telenovela hour. I'll kill you if I miss how Margarita got together with Patel, Shoto said as an off-comment as he walked to the kitchen in a thick sweater and a plate of soba in hand. Hey, never pegged you as a telenovela guy, Ciro mentioned on the side. It has become a family tradition. I never imagined my father liked Colombian novellas, or that my mom finds the Turkish ones appealing. Honestly can't see the appeal on those, so much fabricated drama. At least the Colombian ones go straight to the point, I know. Mina replied, hooking an arm around his neck. So much drama to enlarge the plot. Don't hug me. Know you're warm and I need warmth. Wear a sweater. See? If this was a Turkish novella, that sweater would have ties to a long-lost love and a murder that would fracture the family and cause the dog to die and the eldest son to get lost in a world of drugs at his gold-digging mother's behest and planning, Mina said with a grin. That's too specific, Izuku and Okako muttered at the same time. Plot of last season. God, that was a drag, Mina said with a dramatic sigh. Get off me, Shoto said with a dead tone. No, she punctuated that while sticking her tongue at Shoto with a mischievous look in her eyes as she led him to the sofa, near Yaro Orozu. Then she let him go. This class is nuts, Melissa said, seeing the installation finish, and instantly began adding her info so they could have access to it at any time, as long it was from the living room. But she clarified as iChannel was online, and transmitting her favorite show, Heavy Metal Mayhem, she came to the realization she was kinda nuts too. She had to be for accepting one for all and mixing it with nanobots. Just as nutty as mixing the light with the thuum and biotics. Rikia slightly cracked his neck as he stared at the pile of papers in front of him. Being a corporate mogul and head of the MLA didn't mean that he was free of paperwork, and his secretary would rather risk his wrath by invoking the memory of his father, Destro, in an ill way than to do this much of paper. It spoke volumes about how much she hated it and how much he knew her. Sighing deeply, the leader of the MLA stood up from his desk. All this paperwork could wait at least 3 more hours. They were all mostly miscellaneous things, company necessities that could wait but needed his signature for approval or a veto, again his veto in particular. Leaving his office, he waved his secretary to hold off any calls that weren't important, as in if they weren't MLA related or someone was dying on the other line with their guts hanging out, he didn't want them. Entering the elevator, he tapped the panel to floor 0. The panel immediately lit up red. Without a second thought, he reached for a card and swiped it to the lector in it, and it lit up green. A security measure that permitted him and high-ranking members of the MLA to enter floor 0, a secured area underground where the most secretive work of Detnerat was carried out. As in the most secretive works the MLA carried there. No one of the regular staff had access to floor 0, not even the janitor, and he trusted the guy with his life and was MLA affiliated, but the work there was important, really important, so much that the floor had its own kitchen and those there were expected to provide for one another because there was no kitchen staff, or at the very least have a bento, or 5. This floor was where Tomoyasu, better known as Skeptic, worked, as the network of computers there was located, where he felt more comfortable. With a ding, the doors of the elevator opened and Rikia stepped out. The sound of mainframes working alongside fans keeping them cool reaching his ears alongside the smell of curry. They are having curry today. So he's staying for lunch here. He's not missing floor 0's curry. Walking around the halls and the buzz of personnel working and planning, he reached the room where Skeptic was working, bended over a computer and an obsessive smile on his lips. The leader of intelligence of the MLA was so focused on his work that he didn't notice his boss enter the room. Others did, but Redestro just made a sush motion with his fingers and tiptoed towards Skeptic. Then when he was just inches of him, took a deep breath and don't even think it and promptly blew a forced raspberry while Skeptic kept his work. Honestly, you're the boss and you're up for this childish things. All work and no play makes Rikia a dull boy. One balding one, I might add. The leader of the MLA surprised everyone with his words. You can't expect me to be always the boss. I'm human, he said, tapping his friend on the shoulder. Yes. I remind you the balding is due to your meta-ability accumulative side effects. Not work. Actually, that's work, one of the engineers nearby said. Don't take sides, Skeptic warned. I am contract-bound to take sides with Yotsubasha-sama in every argument he's in. Also, he signs my paychecks and gave me a purpose in life, so the engineer said as he walked away. You actually put that stupid clause in their contracts? Skeptic asked. Yes, was all Rikia said with a smug smile. Skeptic just sighed as he turned once more into the work at hand. Not to be discourteous, but what do you want? He asked. To that, Rikia actually rose an eyebrow. To anyone who didn't know Skeptic, he would pass as rude and inconsiderate. To those who didn't knew him. To those who knew him, they knew he cared. It was just that he was a professional, work first, pleasure later. He had poured so much into the vision of a world liberated out of the chains of laws against meta-abilities that he passed as disrespectful because he could not afford mistakes on his part. He was doing his part to see the vision of Destro and his son realized. Does the main brain of Sahelanthropus has you that stressed? Rikia asked his friend. Yes, he said simply. Bringing the thing to us was the easy part despite the army boys around the cops. The hard part is the coding, Skeptic stated. It uses a devil firewall, he stated, making the engineers in the room hiss in utter horror. But Rikia wasn't exactly in the know regarding computers, so he had no idea what his friend meant. Okay, pretend I know nothing about computers aside from turning them on, he said, making his friend sigh. Okay, it's the ultimate defense in terms of hacks. Island has its own kind of firewalls, interlocked to ensure that whatever gets in can't get out, which doesn't happen because their first firewall is this one, called also the 666 formula, the beast code. Got it on one, Skeptic said with a nod. The numbers aren't as an in-joke, they are what you are supposed to aim to crack the wall, the result being 6. The problem is that to reach that you have to basically do the math, geometry, some quantum physics and juggle several complex formulae that have to end up giving you a 6 as an answer. Rikia just blinked. then blinked once more. Oh, and there are over 1,000,000 sequences and only one is the one you need. Okay, I'll leave you to it. Rikia is a smart man, so he knows when he's beaten and when to delegate tasks to people far more capable than him in certain areas. This was one. Wait, Skeptic began. Before you go, have you thought about what to do about our more radical elements? He asked. For a minute the leader of the MLA stayed silent, then he heaved a deep sigh. Yes, I have. They have to go, but we cannot be the ones to deliver the blow. At the look of his friend and workers, Rikia continued. The radical members were once ours. They formed bonds, friendships. Could I ask anyone here to kill their friend without killing themselves in the process? Or compromising others in the task? No, he sighed. Sometimes we get our hands dirty, but sometimes the work is too dirty. But I have already a solution in the works, Rikia said simply. Tell me, have you heard of the Jackal? Yes, he's a null if I am told well enough, and an excellent marksman. My contacts state that he recently joined some sort of group. No ifs or buts. You know how hard it is to peruse his services. If he joined this group, they have something he wants. You want to use them, Skeptic finally answered. Yes. We hold many ties to the group. They don't, Toga-san, the Jackal called, entering the room, the slightly nutty girl with a ravenous appetite for blood and probable enough issues to make a shrink lose it occupied. Yes, the girl asked, slightly sharpening one of her knives, the kind one used to cut meat or slit a pig's neck. With a finger coated in a red substance, each grinding of the knife sends sparks along the finger. I have been contracted for a job. The pay's good, and one of the specifications the client made was that it didn't need to be made silent, so collateral damage is encouraged, he began. And Tomurakuan agrees. You could use the exercise. Is he calling me fat? Are you calling me fat? Toga asked with a raised eyebrow as she stowed the knife in a small compartment in her room and reached for a belt that held several smaller knives in her collection, all sharpened. I am calling you inexperienced. I haven't got caught, was her cheery reply. Yet, despite your body count, you were considered a non-issue. I assure you, if they had decided to let loose the underground hunters on you, you wouldn't have lasted a day, he said simply. You aren't stealthy enough. You can hide your emotions well, but you can't hide your footsteps well enough, your presence. When you are on a hunt, you must detach yourself of any emotion. Only when it's over you can relish, not before, he stated again. To that end you will accompany me to this job. Okay, Toga said slowly. What exactly do we gain from this, aside from money? Something money can't buy. Experience, he reminded. We will be out for a week. I'll test you and your new quirk in ways not even Tomurakuan can't even imagine. By the end of the week, I expect you ghost the entirety of our targets. If all goes well, we will finish, get paid, and you will be ready, the Jackal said with a small frown. Ready for what? Toga asked. To face him. Toga asked. Your new obsession, Toga blinked several times. In fact, her brain trying to process the information dump until it clicked, and she let out a squeal of delight as she went and hugged Jackal. Oh, you shouldn't have, she said happily, releasing the assassin from her hug and going to a corner of her room. To be honest, Tomura had been kinda shocked to realize that Toga had been on the hunt for someone, just that this one had been a little harder to track down, mostly because the freaking government protected him and his family and later had gone abroad, literally cutting nay chances of reaching him. But Toga was nonplussed about it. She would get to him. To be perfectly honest, her obsessions with him started the day the news showed him, covered in blood and gore, all torn up and still kicking, fighting, tearing, ripping. It made her blood burn and her body do things she wasn't allowed to say near Gadget or to think near Mustard. Apparently, they were pure, whatever Darby and Mr. Compress mean by that. It didn't matter. Her new beau was again back in Japan, and now she had the means to reach him. But Jackal was right. He was nigh unstoppable. All her former crushes were reachable, not him. All of them fought, all of them lost. This one would be different. She knew that. Jackal was right. She needed the exercise, as offensive the wording was. But when all was done, oh, she couldn't wait to become him, to love him. Reaching for a backpack, she slung it to her shoulders, the contents inside clocking ominously. Let's go, Uncle Jackal, she said with a cheer. Please don't call me that. It makes me feel old. Saturday, UA Academy. The days in UA Academy had taught the new blood their very important things. One of them is that despite the fact their teachers were in fact pro-heroes with teaching licenses, highly debatable with Aizawa, the fact they were being taught by pros didn't take the mundane out of learning normal stuff. So normal was the collective thought of every single first year after a week of being taught by men and women that could body them and had faced the grotesque of a city underbelly. Just as Midnight had told them, The first half of the day was normal, mundane, simple. They had to remind themselves that UA, for all intents and purposes, was still a school. It had to teach the basics to heroes because you can't have dumb assess who can't count being the ones that save people. It helped a little that the lessons had a purpose. Math had the added purpose of teaching them how to make counts when they inevitably become pros of their own and had to keep accounts. History, both the past and current era, was taught to ensure the heroes of the tomorrow understood what they came from and where they were headed. English permitted them to communicate in a language that had become nearly universal across the globe when they are called for international operations. This was their first constant during the first week, and aside the delicious lunch provided by Lunch Rush, there was the second half of the day, the heroics class. It was there that Melissa realized something. She wasn't prepared for the brutal slog that was those classes. She thought she was considering the hellish workout she had to put up to gain one for all and get a body capable of not blowing up by simply summoning it. She was wrong. 3 hours of the most brutal training she had endured, all to ensure they are ready for the physically demanding world of heroics. There was a reason No Heroine Lacks a 4-pack became popular. No hero, man or woman, was out of shape. Villains were dangerous. Heroes had to be twice as dangerous to tackle them, hence the insane training they were put through. The hero course had an extra session. They had to cram a lot in 3 years, from training to actual law procedure because they are SWAT, but if it was made by Batman, Spider-Man, Blade, and the Punisher, but they have to abide by the law, understand it, and prevent the four guy from ripping someone's spine. In a week she learned a lot about hero procedure, which in itself was a whole can of worms. All she knew about heroes and how they operated took a 180 turn when she realized that one thing was the stories Uncle Mike told her. Another was the stories of other heroes who weren't her nigh-invincible uncle who could uppercut an army. Then came Saturday. Nearly half a day full of training, and why the fuck does 1B have their hero costumes? Well, Monoma began, dressed elegantly and with several clocks in him, a small, white domino mask covering his face. It seems we have one up you 1A, still in your PE uniforms. TSK, he crowed. Fucking you, Bakugu hissed. His hair seemed to bristle with his emotions, something Melissa knew because Izuku told her that Bakugu no resembled a porcupine with access to dynamite and knew how to use it. Don't even start, Monoma, Vlad King said as he and the rest of his class arrived at Training Grounds Epsilon, a standard warehouse in looks from the outside, but is shaped inside to look like the Grand Canyon. I've seen the specs of their suits. They went all out with them. The ones being made by the support companies will be done next Tuesday, the ones being handled by the support department here in 2 weeks, mostly thanks to Shield-san own suit and Midoriya's armament, Vlad King replied. 1B collectively blinked at the word armament, and how their sensei hesitated at that. Also, Midoriya, Snipe wants you on Training Grounds Omega when classes are done here. If you're going to fire a gun, you're going to learn how to not fire it at someone. Now 1B was worried. It defeats the purpose of the fourth horseman. Also, I'm shooting blanks, Izuku argued quietly. Again his whisper was louder than a scream. How you convince anyone that a fully automatic 4-barrel shotgun is necessary is beyond me. But Snipe agrees, and so Eraserhead, you need to learn how to handle one. Until then that thing will be on a lockbox after it's finished. Literally you're killing my homage of Vlad-sensei, Izuku hissed. You can live without the gun. Also without the Morningstar. It's a flail, Izuku answered or whispered. A flail? Was Vlad King's eloquent question. The fuck, Kinoko Komori asked out loud. Why do you need that? Why you don't need that? Izuku answered with a question of his own. The sad thing was that no one had an answer to that. Okay, everyone settle down. They heard the heroes in charge of the training for Saturday arrive. An old man called Gran Torino somehow was shorter than Mineta, and a tower of a man in a trenchant, scar and a do-rag covering half of his face. The vigilante Knuckle Duster. Half of the combined classes gulped. Knuckle Duster had earned himself a reputation as a relentless vigilante that took down villains with nothing but his fists and traumatic pain via brass knuckles, hence his nickname. The problem was that the old man at his side made All Might tremble. So between the guy that beat villains to within an inch of their lives and the old man who made All Might nope out of a room with his presence alone, they feared the old man more. That went double considering he was still an active hero. How was anyone's guess considering he was walking with a cane? But that old man made All Might tremble when mentioned, that they are wary of him by principle alone. Okay, you zygotes, today we get to break you. Gran Torino began with a grin. Now I see some with new costumes that are in dire need of breaking, and some of you still need to get your chops wet, he added. What he means, Knuckle Duster began, is that you all are green. Yes, even you, Midoriya, wasn't going to say anything, Still the point stands, Knuckle Duster continued. Heroes are not just mindless bruisers. They are and still are an emergency and special unit dedicated first to rescues and second to defuse hostile quirk users. They have special training to defuse situations that range from the aforementioned hostile quirk users to actual criminals, what we call villains. Many think that villains' attack juts out of petty gripes. Some do, but the reality is that most of the attacks are planned, Torino explained. Many stay indoors and far away of hero patrols to plan and hide, but when they come out swinging, and you better be ready to take the hit and dish it back, the old man explained. Which is today's exercise. 2 teams of 3. Class 1A, you will be the villains. 1B, the heroes. Monoma smirked at the outraged expression of Bakugu. Don't be too happy, Monoma. You haven't heard the rest yet, Vlad King warned. As in real life, heroes don't get to choose who they team up with when this happens or to plan how to counter an attack that happens out of the blue, so Gran Torino get to choose your team-ups and you get scattered around without any chance to plan ahead, Vlad King said. The villains, however, can plan ahead and get to choose who to team up with. Bakugu looked less enraged than before, while half of the class were looking to either him, Midoriya, or Todoroki. Be aware, however, that you get to attack one hero first, not the 3 at the same time and by our choosing. Not yours, Aizawa said with a small grin. The 2 classes actually looked somewhat shocked by this. With that explained, now comes the terms of victory and defeat. We are keeping it classical. This exercise should be done in an urban setting, but today we are letting you go easy. The exercise usually has hostages and secondary and tertiary objectives. Minimize collateral damage, minimize wounded or dead, the likes, Vlad King stated. Today you just beat each other, Gran Torino said as he walked around. Victory comes to either team that captures the other. You will be given specialized capture bands you must tie to the other's wrists to call in a capture, either hero or villain. Like I said, we are going on easy here. Usually the heroes are the ones who capture and the villains go for the knockout. We call it KIA, Torino reminded. With that out of the way, Knuckle Duster stepped in. 1A, with me. You arm your teams and plan ahead, he said as he motioned the class to follow him, which they did. Oh, almost forgot. Each exercise lasts 5 minutes. 1B, you zygotes are with me. I'm going to have fun, the old man said with a sadistic grin that made the class look at their sensei for help. He provided none. Traitor, they collectively thought as they marched with Gran Torino to the other end of the gym, hidden from everyone, even 1A. Not of Eraserhead and Vlad King that went to the control booth, the cameras already on and displaying the classes. As expected, 1A was arrayed forming teams. That one is surprising, Vlad King muttered, Aizawa nodding as well. Midoriya had already teamed up with Hagakure and Koda, the trio already discussing a plan, or better yet Hagakure doing the talking, Midoriya putting his 2 cents and Koda nodding or shaking his head. Uraraka, Bakugu and Yaoyorozu. Kyoka, Mineta and Soto. Aiyama, Ashido and Asui, Vlad King called. At first glance, they look randomly placed, like fuck it, you me and other we can make it work, he declared. They are not, Eraserhead said, seeing the team-up of S.H.I.E.L.D., Todoroki, and Kirishima and already discussing a plan. The 20 trained before the exams, they know each other, and they admitted it as much. It has problem child written all over it, Eraserhead reminded. Don't sound like you're not enjoying this, you sadist, Vlad growled. My kids have to go against your little monsters. Must I remind you one of them literally bathed in the blood of his enemies? Not by choice, Aizawa reminded. Vlad just shook his head, seeing how Torino organized the teams, rational and well made. Not that it mattered in the end. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Okay, let's start, Eraserhead said, tapping a button on the console in front of him. Midoriya, Hagakure, Koda. You are first. Your initial target is Rin. His with Tsuburaba and Kodai, Aizawa replied, stepping away as Khan reached for his own console. Rin, Tsuburaba, Kodai. You're up. Good luck, was all he said as the team formed by Gran Torino moved out of the small room in different directions, but not far enough of one another, all while the rest turned to the monitors mounted on the room and looked. Last year NIR, Toru wasn't going to admit it out loud, but hearing Izuku suddenly shift from standard Japanese to whatever was dragon language was incredibly jarring. They are on the move, really close to one another, Izuku hissed. I can confirm, Koji said. Toru had to bit a curse as a freaking rat appeared, chittering to Koji, and he answered back. They are very close, he whispered. So Toru began. Who's Rin? She asked. Koji blinked, actually making a face. Is the guy with the braided ponytail. He has a quirk that let him grow scales on his arms and fire them, Izuku answered smoothly. Of course, you know that, Toru muttered as she saw Koji ask the rat to spot the guy, the rat running away to do so. Okay, plan, modifications. Toru spoke, taking command of the situation. Rinsan's quirk is easy to dismantle. Leave it to me, Izuku said. Showing them both a grenade glowing purple, Toru bit a small curse, knowing full well what that thing could do to quirks. 10 seconds off. That's enough to get a hero who depends too much on them killed. The real problems are the other two, Izuku said. We dismantle him first. Me and Kodakuin can take Tsuburaba-san. You deal with Kodai, Toru replied. Of course, I get to deal with the Ultra Girl ripoff, Izuku hissed. Her quirk's problematic. You're the only one who has the mobility to deal with her, Toru said with a small smile. You just don't want to deal with her. She's so stoic, the once invisible girl replied with a pout. She reacts to nothing, she said, seeing how Izuku narrowed his eyes, looking at the rock formations. Aizawa-sensei never said anything about them hunting us, right? He did not, Koda replied. They are moving toward us, Izuku hissed, void light forming around his arms. Kodakuin. Toru asked the shy animal talker, seeing him nod as he held the rat in one of his hands. She said she found him. His not moving, he replied. I see his aura, is the one on the right of us. Let's spring the trap, Izuku said, grabbing both teens by the shoulders and then simply blinking out of the area. There was doubt among the students of Class 1B. The team-up between Rin, Tsuburaba, and Kodai is, at first glance, solid. Rin covered the long-range assault with his scales. Tsuburaba had defense covered and a modicum of offense if he wanted. Kodai was the wildcard covering both defense and offense and having a large range and a wild quirk that would make any pro think it twice before attacking her without a plan. Of course, the other team wasn't slough either. Hagakyu had insane strength. In a straight-up fight, it would be a victory to her. Koda was shy, but no one could ignore what his quirk could do. Then there was Midoriya and his bullshit of a quirk that made no sense no matter where you look at it. Either he transformed into a roided rabbit, or he turned into a shadow thing, or he, whatever the ice was. It seemed random, but the reality was, it was not, and it put him high on the threat level. Now it seems he can teleport and others as well, which again, is bullshit, as Setsuna had eloquently hissed when they all saw the images. You better start preparing. Bullshit like this happens every day, Gran Torino stated. All might mess your minds. You can't just beat your enemies into submission. You got to be smart about it. He can afford it because his fists are anvils. Even Endeavor has to think tactically on his fight because everyone knows the weakness of fire, he said, seeing on the screens how Kodai and Tsuburaba moved while Rin lagged behind. Smart, Eraserhead told the villain team to engage Rinsan first. He never said anything about the other reacting when it happened. He pointed at the screens. That's the kind of thinking that keeps you alive on the streets. Initiative, he stated simply. Of course. It is our classmates who have the initiative, not 1A. We have the advantage, Monoma said with a smirk. Don't be so overconfident, Torino snapped. That gets you killed on the spot. Having confidence is all good, but being overconfident can end up being used against you. Villains don't fight fair, and if they have to fuck with your mind they will just so they have an advantage, Torino said, then turning and grinning at the class. So it's fair enough to fuck with them as well. Hiryu slowly let his quirk flash across his forearms, scales ready to be fired at the first sign of anyone that wasn't Yui or Kossi. To be fair, Kossi's plan had merit. Spilt apart far enough so their teachers think they are mimicking heroes on patrol and far, but close enough to regroup in case a fight breaks out. They didn't know who was the target, so keeping their distances but close enough to reinforce whoever was attacked was a good choice. The problem was their locations. He was on the far left of the arena, while Yui was on the far right, and Kossi was on the middle. If he was the target, then they would be at his side fast. But if either he or Yui were the targets, then Kossi would be a first responder and the others would have to move faster to help. It was a gamble in either case. SWWWOMMMHHHH. Hiryu tensed when he heard that sound. He turned around when he heard the sound of gravel and dirt being shifted, spotting the three villains, and their realization hit him. He was the purple washed over him. He slightly stumbled onward, arms raised and aimed at his opponents, and the horror began. His scale began to fall of his forearms. Like flaking, he couldn't feel his quirk at all. He felt sluggish. So he never saw Toru rushing onwards, gripping him by the band of his pants and basically tossing to the ground. Arms still up, he felt the restraint tape being tied to his wrists. Hero KIA, he could hear Vlad King's voice echo on the ring, indicating he had been taken out. Malaka. Las. They are on the move, he heard Izuku say. Surprise over then. Let's do this then, Toru replied with a small frown. Hiryu had a small moment to realize what she meant when he saw Izuku grip her and the other boy by the shoulders, and then they vanished, or more like teleported. Well, he muttered, feeling his quirk return. That wasn't fair at all. Kossi had 3 seconds to realize that the plan had gone belly up the moment Vlad-sensei had announced Hiryu's death, and realized that whoever team they were going against had a way to tell where they were at the moment. He used those 3 seconds along with 5 extra more to take a deep breath when he heard it. It sounded like someone was traveling across the air and displacing it. Then he heard 2 thumps and the frantic footsteps when he activated his quirk and raised his arm, blocking Toru's punch. His skin rippled with the barrier around it. He didn't match her strength, but he had resistance to spare, especially when he noted the second person to attack him. A bear, turtle thing. Well, this got interesting. Kossi Tsobyaraba. Original quirk, solid air. Mutated quirk, steel air. Kossi's original quirk depended entirely on lung capacity, as he was able to blast and solidify the air in front of him, creating a transparent bubble that had the resistance of plexiglass, and the size depended on how much air he put into it. That changed when the gas happened. Now he grew 2 extra lungs inside his lungs. These new organs increase his lung capacity and oxygenate blood even faster than before. The real change is that Kossi can use his quirk from every part of his body. His pores act as small vents, allowing him to actually release the stored air from any part of his body, allowing him greater versatility in terms of defense. Add that to the increased lung capacity and he can create larger walls and platforms than ever before. The real kicker is that each barrier rated by him has the strength of actual steel, making them really hard to break. So do not try to punch them. Toru grunted as her fists impacted the see-through material, but while Kossi had resistance, she had strength in spades, something she showed as Kossi was pushed away by the impact, the same material now visible around his body. It was in that instant he realized that he wasn't too fixated on Toru's healthy figure, because a bear paw punished his distraction by bitch slapping him off the ground. Koji Koda. Original quirk, Ana voice. Mutated quirk, Chimera voice. Koji's original quirk, alongside his shy nature, made him pretty much a Disney princess. He was and still is capable of talking to other animals, actually understanding them, and giving them orders. Also, insects because they are technically animals. The gas changed his quirk on a more fundamental level. He can still talk and command animals, however, he can also shapeshift into one, or several. The caveat is that he needs to befriend them in order to use their forms. So far confirmed forms are dog, turtle, cat, bunny, and a bear, and he can mix and match to have the best traits of each species. The question remains is when he had the time to befriend a fucking bear. And how? Okay, the bear bitch slapping him was way over the top, but considering that Hiryu was down there was bound to be a 2-on-1 action. He really needs to stop the innuendos, even if Hagakyu is the picture of healthy, beautiful, and cutie pie he has ever seen. Bum. Even after she began pounding him, no. Bad Kossi. Down boy. Fight first. Imagining the girls later. With that mental admonishment, he took a second breath as he ducked a swipe of Koji's large bare paws, then he exhaled, hard. He had learned that he could shape the air exhaled into something. That was before the mutation. After the mutation it wasn't a matter of if but when. It was satisfying when the air he breathed sailed towards Koji and impacted him on the face, making him stagger by the impact bomb. He had forgotten about Hagakyu. Turning around he exhaled again, this time to the ground. A kick she was aiming to his legs was stopped and the curse she let out as a result was earned because it is not nice to get hit by she shins. He was about to capitalize on her opening when he felt fur around him, his arms bound by the fur, and he realized Koji was bear hugging him, hard. The air around his skin was groaning under the pressure, and so did him. Just because he could take hits didn't mean he could take pressure applied to him as well now. Toru hopped to him, capturing tape on her hands. As a last-ditch effort he tried to exhale a barrier, only for Koji to fall forward, while still hugging him. Well, shit, he thought as several kilos of bear fell on top of him, knocked the air out of him, and dazed him. He never realized in that daze that Koji had turned around and permitted Toru to tie his arms. Kossi is KIA. 2 minutes left. Izuku felt a slight elation as he heard that. Koji and Toru worked really well together if they managed to take Kossi in under a minute. Now came the hard part. Kossi and Rin were easy. Honestly, he could have soloed them both. Kossi posed a bigger problem because his quirk pretty much allowed him to create a barrier around himself. Nothing a fist of havoc can't fix. The real issue was Yue. Her quirk was so broken to what it was before that Izuku honestly was mad that it mutated into that. But one thing is being angry and the other is voicing his anger because his own quirk is bullshit. He has the light, enough said. Another blink and he had taken into the air, and at the apex of his jump, he saw her. Yui Kodai narrowed her eyes at him, and he did the same at her, each one knowing the danger the other represented. So Yui attacked first, picking a small pebble and tossing it at him with surprising strength. Then she pointed in his general direction and made a circle in a clockwise direction. Izuku narrowed his eyes when he saw a red circle forming in the air and in the path of the pebble. Once the pebble passed it, it immediately passed from the size of a golf ball to the size of a bus. Still carries the speed it was launched initially. Izuku gritted his teeth as the now bus-size rock met him, and immediately he began consuming it, empowering concrete and making himself a way forward. Once through it, Izuku landed heavily, eyes narrowed. Yui cracked her neck as a challenge. Yui Kodai. Original quirk, size. Mutated quirk, scale. Yui's original quirk altered the size of the objects she touched with her 5 fingers, minimizing them. At face value, it looks weak, but the real strength of it was that it not only reduced its size, but its mass and weight. As a result, she could touch a tank and practically make it fit her palm and carry it without any issue because it weighed as much as a toy car. The gas changed that, aside from being able to reduce the size of objects, she can increase their size and mass. Not only that, she can do the same with living beings, practically changing the rules of engagement at any given moment. Perhaps the biggest change is that she can do this remotely. By pointing her index finger, she can emit an invisible ray, spinning the ray in a clockwise whatever objects or living being that passes it will grow in size for 5 minutes. If she does the circle in a counter-clockwise, the effect is inverse, meaning they shrink. Also, she has taken to posing when she does that, but apparently, that was something she did before. Yui rose her finger, drawing a circle in the air in front of her. Then she stepped in. Izuku bit a curse as he let this happen. He should have stopped her, but honestly, he wanted to see her quirk in action. He looked up now, seeing her tower over him. He estimated she was at the very least, as tall as 2-floor bus. Obviously, she controlled how big she could get, or how small. Izuku slightly smirked, especially when she took a Ultraman battle pose. Damn it, had this been just a fight he would have followed suit, but he was on a time crunch. Sorry, Kodai-san, Izuku said with a grimace, but I am on a timer, he said as he rushed at her, hands raised in front of him. So, fall then he began firing, his hands letting out shards of concrete that flew like lances and aimed at the larger girl that rose her arms to protect herself. Izuku kept advancing, only for his eyes to widen when Kodai took her jacket off and whipped it out to him, making him jump away, using the mark of the outsider to latch himself to a nearby rock formation, but kept firing his concrete shards. It wasn't only when he saw the jacket grow larger in size that her plan come to a realization. Also when she slammed it on him, pinning him under the massive cloth. Well, I am done. Yui had just a second to let go of the jacket as this one was consumed by an unnatural fire, pieces flaking before she felt gravity punch her in the stomach. Gritting her teeth, she reached for a nearby rock, this one increasing in size as she launched at the flaming boy, but the rock stopped as a purple glow enveloped it, and Izuku was now covered in electricity. Yui's eyes widened in realization, but it was too late. A minute had passed and Toru and Koji were there already. The once invisible girl launched herself, and like a meaty pinball impacted the back of Yui's knee, making her stumble, only to fully fall. Her support leg was suddenly moved by the weight of Bear Koji. On the ground, Yui had little time to do anything as Izuku was already in front of her, capture tape already moving to her wrists. Yui Kodai, KIA. Villain team wins. The girl let out a pained groan, relaxing after this ordeal. Honestly, she thought Izuku was going to yeet himself at her like a freaky rocket or toss a sun at her, but then realized that heroes don't toss suns at people, only at bows. With her hands closed, she was able to deactivate her quirk effects. Good thing that the means to deactivate it remained the same, tapping her fingers together. Instantly, she began shrinking back into her original size. Once back into her normal form, she accepted Izuku's offered hand as he helped her stand up. Your quirk is annoying, Yui supplied simply, her voice neutral. Says the girl that can turn pebbles into boulders, was all Izuku answered with a raised eyebrow. Yui just stared at him neutrally, then blinked. I saw a weakness in you. Good was all Izuku mentioned as he patted her on the shoulder and walked away, a content smile on his face. Yui didn't know it yet, but she had made Izuku's day. Because if she noted that, then the others did too, and if they do, so would the troop or anyone else really. And if they do, then it means they fall directly into his trap. 4 hours later, both classes, with the sole exception of Izuku and perhaps Pony, were panting, exhausted, and nearly ready to give up on life. This day didn't compare to the other days of hero classes. It had been rather brutal. The fact it had been non-stop didn't help much either. The first hour and a half had been their very first exercise in teamwork combat, since it lasted 5 minutes each, with 2 minutes of intervals between fights. At least it lasted that long for them because the rest had been as brutal as the first part. The first part is done. Aizawa and Khan took their classes and began to hammer them with new training, this time specialized. Spatial awareness, to begin with, movement and how to increase momentum, takedowns, how to throw a punch. Melissa and oddly enough Momo had to take that one mandatory. How to recognize lethal takedowns by fellow heroes, Midoriya, Bakugo, and oddly enough Todoroki were in this, and the proper pacing during a patrol. 4 hours of intense physical training they didn't have during the week. It dawned on them later that the training during the week was to prepare them for the more intense Saturday training. After that they were separated once more but allowed to rest. Eraserhead was alongside Knuckle Duster, while Vladking was with Gran Torino. This time they were getting their reviews of the first exercise. Midoriya, you did well in holding on. I see you are branching with your other powers, but remember that just because you can take a hit doesn't mean you should. Hagakyo, good job in using your strengths against your opponents. Do remember to temper yourself. Not everyone can take one of your hits. Koda, also a good job, but do try to take the initiative and try to find more variety. Bears are strong, but they are not a jack of all trades. The trio nodded at Aizawa's words. Uraraka, I liked what you did before. You'll need to learn how to make a proper takedown, but your added mass and size is helpful. Bakugo, you have good instincts. Try to apply them for teamwork. You left Yaro Orozu and she took a hit from Monoma on the field that can get her killed. Yaro Orozu, I know you can make a lot of things, so next time try to make pepper spray. Is non-lethal and no one expects a hero to spray you, otherwise good work on the planning. Aside that small hitch, the girl in question nodded, holding an ice pack she made to her eye, and Uraraka giving Bakugo the stink eye for his part on that. Then Aizawa turned to the third team, the one that lost, but because of one person. Okay, you three, first off shield, he began. Good plan. Still you need to learn how to throw a damned punch, but slaps work too. I sure as hell Kamakiri didn't expect it. Less tetsu, he stated. You still need to be able to calibrate your power on your own. I expect results by this time by the next month. Yes sir, Melissa said, rubbing her arms together, trying to bring warmth to them. Kirishima, you need to stop getting out of shape whenever someone suggests a UN manly tactic. Villains do this all the time. Heroes must be able to counter them and use their own. The red-haired boy actually seemed frustrated, but Aizawa noted that he was also cold, and his teeth grinding was because of the lack of heat. But you took a hit that would have taken shield out. Make sure to temper yourself. Hot-blooded heroes tend to dot the graveyards. I'm in no mood to add one more. Kirishima nodded, this time solemnly. And now, Todoroki, why you froze your teammates? The Erasure hero asked the third member of the team. The heroes were bundled together. My teammates had no way to move away. I acted in the only possible way, the boy answered in a monotone way. Problem child, Yoro Orozu. Go. Aizawa was in no mood to ream Todoroki. Any day he would. Today was not that day. Problem child had to toss a son to thaw the teens out. That also meant that the problem child was not in a good mood. True, his usual tactics were nuke it till it dies, but it was aimed at bows, not at humans. They just tended to get their bones fucking broken. You could have killed them, Izuku began, pulling no punches. I saw the spikes. We all did. Just because it traveled from the floor upwards doesn't mean that one false move in one of our classes would have one less of a person. Ibara-san doesn't take well. The sudden drop of temperature and Shinso-san got frozen while he had his eyes and mouth open. Izuku snapped, his sudden rise in voice making the room to tremble. You were very lucky that in some way we are all enhanced. Before it would have been very painful to thaw someone with their eyes open. Yoro Orozu isn't holding any punches either. I have seen heroes with ice quirks with extreme precision. They don't need to throw a glacier at someone, they just need to freeze their feet or make the floor slippery enough, she added. I know for a fact, Eraserhead began, that Endeavor trained you. You got the precision down, but he trained some of his bad habits, like hitting the target with the biggest fireball that he can muster. In your case with the biggest glacier you can conjure. Shoto actually looked miffed at that declaration of the Erasure hero. It's good we found about this bad habit now. We can curb it before it becomes a real problem down the line. I expect you to be tactical, Todoroki. You can take a villain down with a single ice-covered punch to the jaw or burn the air around them. But you've got to be tactical. You're training to be heroes, not to cause collateral damage. With that, Aizawa turned to the next team. Alliance Heights 1A dorm. Okay, Spill Mina was the first to ask the question that was in their minds at the moment. Spill what? Melissa asked, working on a tablet and researching means that would allow her to control one for all without blowing a limb clean off. How come fucking Deku gets a shotgun? Bakugo asked. Melissa noted some of the teens frowned at what he said. Because fucking Armiger needs weapons to work, she said simply. Now stop arguing, you're getting wrist-mounted grenade launchers, she stated firmly. She got a point. The class looked at Izuku as he entered the dorm with a book in hand. Also, I have good news. Power Loader approved the rest of my arsenal. I'm getting my shovel sword. Swords are illegal in Japan, Mineta pipped in. No, katanas are illegal, especially if they are actually made for their intended use. The only reason Yoroi Musha can use one is that he has a permit. He's a professional hero and he is a teacher, Izuku said. But I have to learn this first, he added as he lifted a book to all to see. Rules and regulations of firearms, safety tips, and whatnot. Snipe-sensei was very adamant with this. No learn this, no fourth horseman for me, meaning my Armiger gets crippled, Izuku said with a small shrug. Also, Izuku continued, Melissa, something arrived with your name on it. It's on the support department, but you better get to it. There was this girl that looked ready to tear into it when it arrived. Melissa perked up at that. Shit my forge, she said with a small curse as she jumped off the sofa and made a beeline to the door and out of the dorm. If a pink girl asks, no, I don't have more gunblades for Power Loader to use, and do not sign anything she asks you, Izuku called, closing the dorm door behind him. He actually stopped when he saw the class looking at him oddly. What? What happened there? Uraraka asked, more out of curiosity than of concern. I honestly have no idea, but something blew up before I got in and the reinforced door got blasted off its hinges. For a whole second the class looked at the green boy with some concern. And they are the ones in charge of your suit, was Kaminari's obvious question. They are making a hero suit, not a bomb. Last time I checked, fabric doesn't explode, Izuku muttered with a pout as he took Melissa's former position and sat with a huff. Now I am not telling any of you what they are adding to your suits. Oh come on Midori, Mina called. Don't be like that, you know we love you. No, you love the fact I can heal, Izuku answered with some snark and a roll of his eyes. Be it as it may, Momo interfered. I assume you want help with the assignment, Midoriya-kun, she asked politely. Please, Kogan. Thank you, Izuku replied. Some of these rules and technicalities are kinda going over my head. Too much hero trivia. Okako said from behind him, leaning and looking at the open book and actually looking somewhat shocked by the number of rules and terminologies in it. More like train to fire and forget kinda deal. Rules. The enemy has no rules and doesn't care about them. Neither does Mr. Bullet, Izuku replied. Well, then it's good I can help you deprogram of those bad habits, Momo replied as she created a single bullet and held it in her fingers. Something one of my bodyguards told me once when he thought I was being lax with my education. This right here, she said, pointing at the bullet, has ended more lives than any quirk imaginable. This has ended tyrants and saints. It respects no one, but we should learn to respect it. When you pick a gun, you hold more than that, a gun. You hold a responsibility far greater than its weight. Engage as a last resort, she said, placing the bullet in Izuku's hand. Your bodyguard was kinda heavy, Mineta muttered. He was, Momo acquiesced. Now Midoriya-kun, the first you have to learn is this, and Izuku was submerged into the interesting world of Japanese laws regarding gun carrying, usage and ownage. How his mom and Snipe were allowed to own guns. Especially Snipe with that monster, he has no idea. He's about to find out. Chapter end notes. So, pretty wild this far. I hope you guys are having a great Easter. I know I am. Got my third shot 2 days ago and currently, I feel like shit, which is good because I have 2 days to recover due to the holy season here in Colombia. Thursday and Friday, no work, just resting, and you guys wouldn't believe how quiet the streets are right now, like I haven't heard a car in over 2 hours, so I am just writing and pretty much drinking water like if I was a camel. So there's that. Some extra recommendations for fics I have been reading and have been distracting me like crazy. First on the list, Shni, Hero or Huntress, in which Weiss got isekai'd via a spear to the BNHA world, but with no way to go back, meaning no gods, no fierce-smelling monsters, and Weiss has PTSD and an attitude because how easy people in the BNHA world has it. The fic is composed of small chapters, easy to digest, which built the entire trauma nicely, currently when Shinsu declares war on 1A. The second fic is Float with Me, first semester, a fic in which everyone is competent and Izuku got float first because One for All somehow recognized he wasn't ready for weather-changing punches. Is Izuocha, my favorite if you can't tell, but well built. It is not forced and has other pairings as well, alongside a more strict Dadzawa because he has PTSD and the lingering fear one of his students don't come back like a Boro. Also Midnight is hopelessly thirsty for Tensai. The third fic is Ties That Bind, a fic in which Izuku is All Might's son when he had a one-night stand with Inko. Both were under false identities. She was a vigilante or villain, then married AFO, had 2 children with him, but then told him to cut the villain shit or fuck off, which he did and got his head caved as a result and got super dead like he's really dead. It's about the only spoiler I'm willing to give. That and Izuku is a freaking gremlin with a heart of gold, and his sister Aiko is Chulhu's half-sibling Trice removed that her family loves, but everyone else is like, can't you see she's consorting with dark forces? Kind of situation. Oh, also Eri, and a kleptomaniac small brother Izuku has, which is his most endearing quality aside being a Mako fan and being the nuclear option for Aizawa who is done with life. This fic is pure crack concentrated in some places, and in others it is holy shit this thing insane kind of thing. I recommend it. And also any other fic of the author Mirand whose half OD the time writes crack that cracks my ribs for the laughter alone. The last recommendation is more an author's recommendation. The _mad_mystic himself is the kind of author who asks himself the question what it. But then he thinks it over and writes it because this is what he does. Currently he wrote one of my favorite fics, a 3-part fic called Consequences of Expulsion, in which the threat of expulsion is carried by Aizawa who has no idea what the kids he just expelled might be facing back home or the intricate psychological trauma they might have carried out due to their quirks, social status, or how they are. As a person, the only spoiler I'm willing to share is that 3 of those students kill themselves. Oh, and Endeavor doesn't go off like a volcano when Shoto gets expelled. And that's it. I'm currently working on the next chapter, so give me your thoughts, ideas, and reviews. I feed of them, and currently, it keeps me from spiraling into Anthem out of sheer boredom. Don't make a brother spiral into Anthem. So HYPN0S Sigs and out. Peace and happy Easter. This would be all for today. Next part coming soon, so please like, share, and subscribe to get informed as soon as the next part drops.